Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the podcast. My name is Jeremy. This is Divergence Media. So tonight, I'm really going to be passing the torch over to Cliff, and what we want to do is just kind of cover some of the foundational things. And Cliff is much more well-rehearsed in these things than I am, and he's definitely a lot better at articulating these things in a very beautiful, sort of artistic and intellectual way. So at best, I'm going to be trying to just fill the space for Cliff to not feel like he's speaking to dead air. But we're also going to go over some things with his YouTube channel. But before we do that, I actually want to just kind of throw out a thank you to a lot of members that have been at our Discord server. That you guys have been really helping out a lot to grow the channel, to grow the Discord server, to get some attention drawn this way. And I just want to send you my thanks for that. It really means a lot to me, and it's going to mean a lot to the community. So thank you guys again. You guys are doing an awesome job, and I'm really excited to see where it's going to go in the future. So without any more blabbering from me, I'm going to pass this over to Cliff and say hello to you. How you doing, sir?
Doing well. And yourself?
Oh,
Things
I'm
going good?
doing good, man. I had a late day at work today and got home. I took a shower, rushed down here. I mean, it's been just popping it off as quick as I could. I had
Sweet.
no time at all to prepare. I ran down here, cut everything on, and hit live stream go, and here we are.
Excellent. Off the
Yeah.
cuff. Love it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so, well, when if I'm talking about these videos and
Hmm.
they are pretty deep, most of these videos are deep. So, and this is on my channel. So, if people do or are talking in the chat section, I assume the chat's on
Hmm.
YouTube. Yep. So if they do have questions in that and we do pause, I don't mind answering questions as well. So without any further ado, we'll get into it. So I think I started this. Let's have a look. I started this channel quite a while back, and
Yep.
yeah, August 25th, 2015. And this YouTube was created from a Facebook group, which is still existent, called Awake New Zealand on Facebook, and it's a private group. I think it's still a hidden group too, because we didn't want to get kicked. I could see that there was a lot of censorship coming down the pike on Facebook. And
Hmm.
so they got to me personally because I did post the odd thing personally, Nothing too major though, but just history. And eventually they kicked me. And the condition of me joining Facebook again was on condition they give them tons of information. They wanted to know everything about me before I joined. I'd have to put a legitimate name up and everything else. So I thought, fuck, I'm not going to do that. So anyway, Awake New Zealand on Facebook still going. There's a few mods there some people might know already. And I started up with a lady friend in Wellington, New Zealand, called, I'll just call her Lucy. And so we did a few talk shows together. And then eventually, like I said, I got removed from Facebook.
Mm.
Uh, And so the talks kind of did peter off a bit, and I ended up doing a few talks with friends that I've met over the years throughout the world, in England and America and maybe Canada and Australia too, and New Zealand. So there's a whole broad group of people, just normal people that aren't that well known, that I've met personally that I talk to, they're quite interesting talks. So let's start. So the first one I did was probably a big foundational, in your face uh, talk by the man himself, George Orwell, or Eric Blair, I think that's his real name.
Yeah.
Hmm. So he, with his, this is just before he died, and he is basically just telling you how it is. He's telling, I think it was back in the uh, late 40s.
That clip's only 2 minutes long, actually, and I think it's worth taking a look at. You want to go ahead and take a look at it?
Yep.
You do?
Me? No, just leave it up to people to do it. I
Okay.
mean,
Yeah.
basically, he's just saying, he's telling you how it is. I'm not going to tell you.
Sure.
I'll just
Okay.
leave it a surprise.
Sure.
But and why I put him there is because part of the thing that we'll go over, the perception that has been glossed over the world. It's like they said in the Matrix that it's the world that's been pulled over your eyes. Like Morpheus said that. So it's the
Mm-hmm.
world been pulled over your eyes is the perception through birth, growing up, your parents not knowing what's really going on, and you obviously learning from them. And then we get put into schools and we get indoctrinated, and they're never ever going to talk about deep stuff. We know that. Even in university, it's pretty shallow. So, but that's another topic. So anyway, so check that out. Pretty simple.
Mm-hmm.
But you'll see that 1984 is quite pertinent in today's world. It's subtle, but it's there. There's many techniques that George Orwell's talked about that are in your world today, all over the world, no country exempt.
Sure.
Uh, so the next one, Luxor Vegas, is Bill Cooper, which is another really good teacher. Why is Bill Cooper a good teacher? Because he spent years and years building an archive of the truth, as much as he could get. He wrote the Pale Horse book.
The infamous pale horse.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, check him out if you haven't. I know a lot of Americans have, you know.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
don't know about many other countries. So check out Bill Cooper. He's talking the world system again. He's not just talking America. And that's what a lot of probably foreign people to America don't realize, that if you do study things in America, you'll find it is secrets to the West. There's a lot of secrets in America that are run through the West that I've learned. So it's um, so for an example, in New Zealand, the media trains the people to hate America, especially with Trump, right? Maybe not so
Right.
much with Obama, but
Sure.
generally speaking, a New Zealander would think, a naive New Zealander would think, naive, and some of them are smart, but would think, oh, America's strange. So they don't even really want to look at it.
Well, we are strange.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you carry guns and all this stuff.
You're
So,
right.
the
Yeah.
rest of the world really is at awe with that, by
Yeah.
speaking and growing up with them.
Yep.
So, and it's good for us that, I mean, now we've got the internet, it's good for us to share our perspectives. If we've got a guy from each part of the world talking that's pretty awake, we're going to get some good perspectives on what's happening,
Mm-hmm.
from the horse's mouth. But anyway, okay, so back to Bill Cooper. So, yeah, Luxor, Vegas, that's basically very interesting. It's very occultic because in Vegas they've got a um, massively symbolic Egyptian arrangement. It's not a replica of Giza or anything, but it's just a massively occultic uh, playground. It kind of looks like a playground that is almost what he's saying in that video. He's showing you that it's initiatory. So people going in there getting an initiation with the ancient mystery school religion, right? So the ancient mystery school religion is connected to Freemasonry, and anyone can look at all this because there's religion involved, and and that's the head of all the religions of the world, all of them, including even the Buddhist type religions, the solitary meditation religions and things. So
Hmm.
obviously that's deep stuff. So Bill Cooper went into all that too. He clarified a lot of stuff. So check him out. Uh, so the next one, very interesting. A lot of people are definitely unaware of Aldous Huxley. Aldous Huxley was the head of UNESCO back in the 40s, and he uh, but UNESCO's to do a lot. It's United Nations, right? And it's to do with mainly education or indoctrination, whichever way you want to put
Sure.
it.
Yeah.
So, so he's like the mastermind behind the era of massive change because it's after the war and during the war too. It was, but mainly after the war, United Nations, of course. Before
Mm-hmm.
that, League of Nations. And so the Huxleys and his father, as I think we said in the last talk, they are interlinked to the Darwins and all that stuff. So the aristocratic scientific elite. This is what they are. That's what Aldous Huxley is. And so these guys, along with United Nations, etc., are in with the World Bank, the bankers and all that, IMF, and so they're a
Mm-hmm.
huge international organization, split up into massive, purposeful groups that specialize in certain areas of the human and world systems. That's really what they are,
Mm-hmm.
and they are literally the lever pullers behind the scenes. These types of people, and that's really what the channel's always been about, and that's what I've always been into. I'm not interested in countries. I'm not
Right.
interested much in them at all. I'm interested in what's behind the countries. I'm interested in, the behind the scenes. And I said it the other day, like you've got the shop front, which is England, Canada, US, New Zealand, Australia, even Israel, right? They're
Mm-hmm.
all just the same shop front. This is like talking from an occult perspective. So understanding that, and it is a big bite for people to do that if they've never even thought of it. But that is where you go when you want to find the occult. You can't get it on the shop front. The shop front could also be a public court, not a Star Chamber hearing, which is private, but a public court is the shop front. The news media is the shop front. The general public is the shop front. Mainstream TV and radio is the shop front. Mainstream magazines is the shop front. It's public schools. Anything public is the shop front, pretty
And
much.
so for those that are Americans, so typically when we would say something more like it's when you're window shopping and you're viewing a product from the side of the street, that is the first thing, of course, that you view, and so that is what catches your attention. That is where your focus is at. And so
Yep.
that's really what you're saying when you say shop front. It is those things that are right in your face and those things that sort of ooh, a butterfly. You get
Yep.
very interested in it.
Yep. Window shopping. So you're window shopping, and that's your media. And then you walk into the entrance. You walk into the entrance. So you're entranced.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go in, and then they'll sell it to you. This is how they're even doing it. You have to buy into this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
If you believe everything you see and hear, then you're buying into it. And there will be, obviously, through human nature, conflicts within these perceptions of interest. And
Sure.
we see that played out with left and right paradigms and wars and all kinds of things. So at the shop front level, you'll also find that there'll be fights behind the scenes too, but not as much. The shop front public scene of the world, of all the shop fronts, is violence and craziness, but behind the scenes, it's organized.
Mm-hmm.
That's the other trait that is unusual. And again, it's a big bite because nobody looks at this. They don't know where the entry points are. So, this interview from Huxley is an entry point. It's got the man himself speaking about the private side of the control system, basically. And he's talking and talking about, the Brave New World scenario, basically, which he called the final revolution. Right, so they talk about, and on their private side, the bankers, and most people refer to them as the bankers. I don't want to get into any religious words and stuff here because I think that's another dead end, rabbit hole, control group.
Sure.
The other thing is that religions dominate the shop front and they collectivize people. And once the people are collectivized, they change their whole thinking, they make leaders, and then they get controlled
Mm-hmm.
by someone higher. So
Right.
this is definitely how they're doing it. And some of the people obviously out there have looked at conspiracy theories, etc., and they say, yeah, I've seen a lot of this stuff. So, well, if you go in, like some people like myself started out, we'd go, oh, yeah, I'd still be skeptical. I'd think, whatever, I'm not going to be sucked in. This could be a revolutionary mind control on myself to make me rise up and all that. So I've even considered that too. Um,
Well,
and
even
yeah,
then, though, I would say though, so for like Aldous Huxley, Brave New World, and George Orwell, In a way, you could say that their books were sort of a straw man, but it was intentionally put out that. I mean, it was intentionally very hyper inflated because it wanted to, draw out a certain emotional response to it. Uh, but they were based on their real thoughts. Hey, these things can really happen. So, and I really
Yeah.
think just staying right here, looking at Brave New World and 1984, I think we find in today's society we see a nice combination of both of them, uh,
Yeah.
and the two even sort of had a rivalry. And I'm sure you've probably read some of the letters that they've sent back and forth.
Yeah.
Because the two were kind of going back. No, I'm right. You're right. It's kind of
Yeah.
humorous in a way, but
Yeah.
uh,
You're right. And I mean, Aldous Huxley speaks very British. He's here, and this is how it is, and he's got the
mhm,
British. So, well, George Orwell worked for the BBC, and then he left. He defected, you could say almost. This is probably why he died early. And
yep,
they're after them; they're going to get him.
sure.
So he was a master of propaganda too. You could say he was taught all these techniques too, in another field, of course. Like Huxley, no doubt would have been involved in the BBC and Tavistock and all that stuff as well. He'd have his hand in all that. He would know Bertrand Russell, for instance, as well. So a lot of them do know each other. So once you get onto these people in history, you can start to see some real truth there of what they're saying. And that's what people want. We don't want to guess. So, anyway, so check that out. Good video.
Now,
The
what do
next
you
one.
say, real quick, before we move on? I want to ask you this. What do you say to the people? Because many times when I speak about things as, Orwellian has become quite the coined term to describe something, right? Uh,
Hmm.
Many times I've had people say, yeah, but George Orwell was a socialist. So how could you even use that as an argument or a point of reference for this
Mm,
conversation?
good point. Yeah, well, he would have gone through, he would have learnt as he's grown up for a start, like any other human. These people just keep learning as they get older. And so he may have changed his tune along the line as he grew up. He might have been a socialist and then he was a um, more of a patriot, you know, which
Hmm.
is sort of a socialist too in a way because you're at a national socialism level, a patriot. Um, so yeah, you could say he was even patriotic, and he stood for what he understood for democracy to be. What because democracy is such a stretchable word. So he would be honest and say, well, this is my impression of what democracy is, and it's the gun on the wall for a start. So he
Right.
was a gun supporter. So generally speaking, I wouldn't put George Orwell at all in a bad light. I think generally he was maybe misled, but he was a good guy. He was telling you to wake up. He was a
Hmm.
genuine guy telling you to wake up. Same with Huxley to some degree, even though he was in with the elite that dominate the world, he was still, he had a bit of heart, he had a bit of a conscience, and he came out with telling people too. So this happens a lot. I didn't know this, of course, until I fell upon this stuff. So, and then the picture on there too, I'll just say that, like I put there as a bit of tongue in cheek to say that, look, the technology you're getting given is obsolete. Well, you're
Mm.
putting on virtual reality goggles. They've been putting them on back in the days of black and white TVs.
Ah, yeah.
That's the guy there looking at a virtual reality set.
Yep.
So, yeah, so there's a lot of stuff like that, which is another part of the occult public-private curtain. So anyway, we'll move along because I've got to get these through. So,
Yep.
part of an honor dishonor course. There's part one and part two. Now, that guy there's an Australian guy called Mark Patelek, and he came up and then went. And why did he go? Because he's probably realized most people didn't care, and he was getting pressure from the government big time because he would try out his methods. So he is basically like another Freeman type, only he was very good, very intelligent, very unique. And I think he's got good points there for a newbie, for a newbie to the system. I won't even say the courts, I'll say the system. So check it out. Not many people know of him. He was quite impactful for me in the day, but it's by no means the be all end all. Like he's scratching the surface, in my opinion, on that subject. So, and then I'll put the matrix bending spoons because the idea in the commercial world of dealing with paper, straw men, and fictional robes and rituals and voodoo, it starts to become fiction. And so when you can start to define the fiction that you're given, the maps of reality which aren't reality, or the legal fictions or whatever, you can start to see they're not there. And so there's, like the kid said in the Matrix, the spoon does not exist. There
Mm-hmm.
is no spoon to bend. So that's the whole concept in the Matrix too. Um, Consequently, I was listening to a guy talking about double binds, which is another problem with the system where we're put into every day as a double bind. And he was hard to understand because his accent wasn't good, so I won't mention his name. But he did mention that in his theory of putting these things together, how to escape a double bind, he said, in theory, and if you think about it, I think there's something to it, that a double bind does not exist. Because a double bind is close to double think and double speak, going back to George Orwell. They used to have double speak,
Sure.
and you think and you speak, which
Mm-hmm.
was double speak. So this is why people are confused in the system a lot, because we get pounded with contradiction or double binds. And so because something contradicts, it can't be the truth. You know what I mean? It's a
Right.
hypocrisy. It's not real. So it's something to think about because this is what the doorway out of the fictional control system, you could call it. So anyway, we'll carry on. So the
Okay.
next one is Best Enemies Money Can Buy by the interview of Professor Anthony C. Sutton, which he's very renowned. A lot of conspiracy guys would have heard of him. If you haven't, check him out. He's pretty legit. He's not just a nobody. He's a top academic that's gathered tons of evidence to show you how the bankers have worked through history with wars and things like that.
Well, that's right up my alley.
Yep. So
It's like
check
I don't
him
know
out.
why economics is just one of my favorite topics. Maybe it's just because something I understand. I don't know. Uh,
Yep.
we tend to
Yep.
lean to things that we understand best. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. There's things that you're attracted to or not.
Sure.
So yeah. So he wrote the book Wall Street and the Bolshevik Revolution, and he wrote Wall Street and the Rise of Hitler,
Hmm.
and he wrote quite a few others. So check that out. Very interesting.
Okay.
Uh, Next one again, Anthony C. Sutton, Skull and Bones. So he goes into his meticulous research into skull and bones, which is a really cool topic. That's why I put it there. Skull and Bones goes back to all the symbolism you've seen with Skull and Bones, right throughout history, cartoons, movies, fairy tales, whatever, you know. And so the whole idea of Skull and Bones is worth looking at. It's fascinating stuff, and it actually goes in again to the bankers. That's why those that follow David Icke in D's illustration, you'll always see um, D, the artist guy. He'd always put a pirate flag on the Federal Reserve
Yeah.
because they go back to the pirates of the Caribbean. No shit.
Huh.
The empire, the builders are the pirates, or they use pirate techniques, and they would be definitely backing the pirates. See, all of these violent gang revolutionary types are backed by Big Brother all through history. So that's a whole new world of knowledge that people don't realize. They're revolutionaries. They have agitators. They know what pisses you off. That's why we get pissed off with it. They know that. They know that. They're going, ha, 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 triggered.
Maniacal laugh, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll move on. So, next one, Hour of the Time, Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare. Very good talk by Bill Cooper again. Two parts, very good. Because, again, with some of these topics like secret societies, which is another topic that people don't talk about, is deep stuff, and you've got to hear everyone's perspective, which means, and some people go, oh, why not read books too? Well, it's the same as hearing someone. Someone's thought the words, or
Mm-hmm.
wrote them on the book, and you listen while reading the thing. So look at everyone's perspectives on their perspective. He might be wrong here or there, but at least he's adding to it. on what he found, whoever that is, you know. So
Sure.
that's another thing I've done. And these seem to be close to factual, of course, right? Okay, so and then you got the robot on the news, of course, they're like robots because they read
Right.
scripts. They read scripts, they get to follow their orders of their bosses or they get in jail. Like a media personality will get jail if they breach the contract. You won't just lose your job, you'll go to jail.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow. Yeah, I
yeah,
was not aware of
serious
that.
stuff. Yep.
Hmm.
So pay you well, sign Satan's thing again, sign the
Right.
contract, and you better toe the line. You better look good. You got to lose weight when we tell you. You got to do this. You got to do that. You
Well,
got to look.
that's
Yep.
not to get off topic, but that's actually very fascinating considering we know, at least in the United States, if you remember back in the Bush administration, he was called out for the government providing prepackaged news stories to the media that the media put out, basically not even checking them, just to just put
Yeah.
them out exactly as they received them.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's
Yeah.
fascinating though to find out that they're actually held to a legal contract to do
Contract.
so.
Yeah,
Yep.
and we think about it deeply, you see that they kind of get again a quid pro quo because they say, "Hang on, we can't harm the public because it's a public service." Most of these news channels, they have to toe the line in a quid pro quo fashion. They can him and ha about this or that they have to protect the public. And of course, as we go through history and into the future, the safety net of socialism is not just getting your physical environment to be safe so you can't move, but it's also clamping down on your mind so it can't move. So we become children, basically, forever children that are just follow daddy's orders or the newsman's orders for that matter. They kind of talk down to you too. You'll notice a lot of them, right? They talk down to you.
Hmm.
So the next picture is funny. That's if some might have seen that, but it's basically a little family and that looking in Nevada, right? Here they are in their little safe house, and they're letting off a nuke in Nevada. There's a few pictures out there, and I had a commenter on there saying, "Yeah, I remember that happening." So they're letting off nukes in your backyard. You should
Yeah.
be right, mate. Yeah. And that kind of flies in the face of the people that say, "Oh, there's no such thing as nuclear weapons." That's like,
Yeah.
well, there's too many witnesses, man. You
Right.
can't deny that. Anyway, so we move on. So yeah, so now we get into the Alan Watt talks. And so what I've done is I've literally listened to thousands of his talks from start to finish. He's been on the scene for fuck,
It's impressive
easy.
that he even has thousands of talks to listen to.
Yeah, but he's got his own private channel with backups and all kinds of things. He's got a very secure system, and he still gets hassled, as you can imagine.
Hmm.
But he doesn't really agitate so much. He's just telling you the truth. He's like a historian. So you don't need to, the government can't go, "Oh, you're a hate speecher." No, he's just telling you the truth. He's reading their articles and saying, "See, they're telling you." It's just a lot of the time what happens is people don't have time to even see the news. So they're getting their main bits and bytes through the radio or whatever. But if you go and look at the papers, you'll get more detail, and you'll find they're telling you a lot of truth too. Even Orwell said, all propaganda is lies, including when one is telling you the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's.
See? So, in other words, what he said there is when someone's telling you the truth, some people will yell, "Lies, lies,
Right.
lies."
Right.
See? So you
Right.
just make sides, make sides. So what we as people need to do is find the real truth because they're giving you sides. And you'll take one, you'll take them. Maybe they're both wrong. Maybe one's right.
So
Maybe
I
one's wrong.
suppose
So
that if you train your mind to always operate using the Socratic method of thinking and sort of the Socratic method of questioning things, uh, at least that's a beginning point to find truth in these things. To be able to recognize the truth and recognize lies without just like you're saying, assuming that it's always lies because it's propaganda, or assuming it's always truth,
yeah.
et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. The key is to look at it critically. And if you don't really know, then you don't know. You've got to have a lot of different angles
Mm-hmm.
within all these things to come to your own conclusion. I mean, I've said to a lot of my friends here, I say, I'm still learning. And but what seems to happen is that uh, what seems to come out when you look behind the curtain in the private world again, like I said, it'll start to get where things line up easier. You'll start to see things way clearer, and you'll start to see through uh, the shop front, surface level, fictional controversies
Right.
that are collective ideologies that really mean nothing. They're just emotional triggers. So behind, anyway, we'll carry on because time's flying.
Okay.
So Alan Watt, again, check out his channel, donate to him. He does it free. He gives out donations. He's got books and stuff he did. It goes into the occult of the words and how they're coded and stuff. So very interesting. So the first one, System All Around You, I put on the home front of my page because it really sums up as a timeless talk in detail. It sums up the big picture, you know, but it's obviously only covered over less than an hour, so you can't, but it's a good intro. That's why I put it there. The picture on it says, "No one is free who has not obtained the empire of himself." Right? I just found that out there, and I thought, "Fuck, that sounds pretty true."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would also like to say that while that may just seem very basic, it sort of resonates with me that when you say this is a timeless speech, it's when he's talking about it's timeless. To me, that kind of actually sent me down a line of thought because there are topics that are very timeless and universal across all time, right? It's just a foundational way of viewing things or understanding certain things, as to where the majority of us, we spend a lot of time really focused on the current events that are going on, and so we view things through a microscopic lens, and a lot of times we actually do compartmentalize our own thinking, so we may be missing the big picture in many ways if we're also not used to viewing things sort of from a timeless perspective.
Yeah, the cool thing I think is that that truth is timeless, because
Sure.
truth doesn't change much. It's foundational. The fiction is what changes, and the truth's going nowhere. It's always, and that's where you get a lot of people saying, the more we change, the more we stay the same. Which is a contradiction. But what it's saying is that there's an underlying current of human interaction, behavior, and possibly nature, which is a whole deep topic if you think about it. Because human nature is programmable, technically.
Hmm.
So we're adaptable and programmable. But the general nature of man stays the same. We're technically still quite savage today as we were, hundreds of years ago, maybe thousands of years ago. It's just that it's portrayed in a different way, so our perception can't see it, and it has sciences like that give it narcissistic overtones of friend. It's like that movie Mars Attacks. We're here to help. We're here to save you, and they start shooting everyone. So it's really a bit of a and there's a bit of a narcissistic mask of I'm your friend, but they're really out to get you,
Yeah. That
which
movie
is
was pretty
common. I mean,
funny though,
that's
by the way. That movie was actually quite comical.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Some cool movies. I mean, even talking
Yeah.
about some movies would be a subject. Anyway, the next talk, give or take, it's not a lot of views because the audio wasn't working too well on that. That was my first talk on Facebook, so give or take, it's low volume,
Sure.
whatever. Next one, so I might even delete that one day. So the other next one, very good, got a lot of views. Haven't pushed it too much, and it was shocking. I made it shocking. So what I've done with a lot of Alan's talks is particularly good ones, and I've got another one on the way that is quite rare. You won't see on even his channel. I've got that is very deep. I like the deep ones because you can chew them for a long time and go back to them and listen and get more
Hmm.
information. So the War Planners, I created the title. It wasn't the original title, and it's two parts. And I summed it up as a war planners as the title I think it suits. And it shows you, no kidding, because this is really heavy stuff, it shows you the actual elite books of them telling you through the years that before we were born of how they set up wars. And the shocking part of it is that you thought the war was a battlefield away from the citizens and all that. No, the war is created on all sides, right down to building your home little buildings and factories to manufacture the wars. So
Mm-hmm.
their idea of a war is the whole thing. It's the whole world.
Sure.
So this in a way, a lot of people may not perceive that, but this is showing you the elite in a way that you've never expected, that will make you think, now I know why they had all their little maps with all their little toy horses and soldiers and shit. Yeah, it goes way deeper. It goes way deeper than just battlefields like you thought. So it's something to think about. Plus, of course, Alan Watts going into all these deep things and giving you articles and books and all the rest of it on the particular subject. So very good. I'm quite happy with that video. Uh, Next talk is myself talking with Lucy about the birth certificate, which I've experimented with years ago, and talked to a lot of people about it too over the years on what they've done with their birth certificates. I knew some of you guys might have heard of Bill Turner. I've met Bill Turner personally, and we've shared notes a lot. And he's got his way, I've got my way, and we deal with the system. He's really good at court stuff too. So anyway, worth a listen. A few little ideas there. Next talk is actually a guy, Alan, who was in our Mark Stevens group. Alan Williams, some of you guys know him. And yes, he is sober on there, so we actually do have a conversation.
Okay.
That's all I'll say about that one. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, it was okay. I mean, when Alan was sober, and he'll probably hear this, when Alan was sober, he's a really good guy. That's why he's on the show. So it's a
Yeah.
shame. It just shows you what alcohol can do. And I really hope if he hears this that he gives it up, because he'd be a better person.
Yeah.
He'd be talented. Next talk, war is peace, ignorance is strength, etc. That's George Orwell again, right?
Yeah.
Double speak. So good video. More information. I won't go too much into that. Talk 4. This is Global Awake on Facebook. Peter Jones was running for a council in a city in New Zealand. He was a legitimate running councillor, politician of the council, and he was on Awake on Facebook, and he got to know me, and he did the show. And he knew Agenda 21, as we'll talk about as we go. He knew about Agenda 21 and all of its tenets, or most of it. And so he was going around, and I said to him, go and hammer these people in the politics and the government, see what they know. And his feedback to me in the talk on that, he's saying they don't know shit. They're just being paid to do what their bosses tell them. And that's from the horse's mouth.
Wow.
I try and
Yeah.
get this from the horse's mouth and then ask the questions. Is this happening? Is this happening? So they don't know. They just walk in a sort of a daze and go, well, I'm getting paid. And yeah, I have to govern and I have to clean everything up as my bosses tell me. So not good.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't work. It doesn't fucking work. That's why it's not working. Next one, Fabrice and Jimmy, the Bunker Show. That was interesting. I think that one was a show in England. Yeah, the Bunker Show, which was a radio show that was underground. It wasn't mainstream.
Sure.
So pretty good talk. It was a few years ago.
It's like this
me.
one. We are definitely underground.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Sure.
we're underground.
Yeah.
Next one, Alan Watt Future is here. More information. Good talk. Another selected talk. I select these talks because some of his talks he'd repeat himself a bit. So these are the foundational things, to really look into that lead to more study if the person's serious. Next talk, dominant minority, passive majority versus sentient minority, is what he's saying there is, and that's his title too, Alan Watts' title. So he's saying dominant minority. That's the elite, right? Why are they dominant? Because they got all the sciences and the structure to control huge populace without them even knowing it, or how they're being controlled. So that's why there's a dominant minority. They've got the power. Simple as that. Passive majority. That's the sheeple.
Mm-hmm.
The people that don't question. Versus sentient minority. That's us. That's us. So when you wake up, it's like you've got the elite to deal with, which is like, and all their control things. Mind you, if they met someone like us that is sentient, they would appreciate you. Right? That's my opinion. I've met some of them. They appreciate you. They think, wow, this guy's, how does he know all this stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Sonny, I've got a job for you. They'll be kind of like that. But anyway, so probably the biggest problem is when you wake up is you got to deal with the passive majority. And that obviously includes police and all that stuff because they are the passive majority.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're not the elite, nowhere near it.
No.
So good talk, that one. Very deep, goes into the Darwin connection and the Darwinism and the religion of Darwinism. Very good talk, that will wake you up big time. One of my favorites, that. Okay, next talk, global elite. Okay, now this is cool, man. This was a guy, and I did the show after the earthquake. Now, some of you guys around the world have heard that Christchurch a few years ago had a huge earthquake.
No,
Right?
I didn't know that.
You didn't? Oh, okay.
No, I don't know how I
It
missed
was
that,
it
but
was
yeah.
it was a few years ago. It was pretty big. It was all over the world, and it was all this stuff. And this guy here, Nigel Gray, it's called blatant geoengineering. People are hearing. And what are they hearing? Well, they heard through Facebook that he predicted the earthquake, and he did. He predicted on his YouTube and on Facebook, who had a few members, he predicted the earthquake. All of a sudden, he got 10,000 joins on his group, which was about geoengineering. That's what he's an expert in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he got 10,000 over that. Instantly got 10,000 people join. I was linked in with them, linking people to Awake to say, come over here, there's more, because they're getting awake to geoengineering, which is only part of it, right? And I definitely know geoengineering exists, so that's another topic. But anyway, so not only was this guy clued up like that, but he was a fairly high-level Scientologist.
Really?
Yeah, and I can still talk to him. We can get him on for a show if you want.
That'd be
And he's
fascinating,
yeah, and he's a good guy. I mean, he didn't push it on me. I even said, "How come down and see the Scientology church because there's a new one built? I'll just check it out." He goes, "Nah, don't worry, Cliff," because he only wants people to join. He's honest with that, and he said it's not for you, and it's not for me because I'm my own person. I'm not going to join a church, and he knows that.
Which reminds
So anyway,
me also, I've got a friend of mine. He was a friend of mine, and then later I found out that he's a Satanist. Never would have known unless he told me. But he wants to come on the show at some point, and I may set that up to where he can maybe give us some insight on what Satanism looks like. From just a normal Joe Schmo Satanist.
Awesome. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, because I mean, these are all these ideas and these allegories and these symbols and that are all throughout society. God, good and evil, God and Satan. So it's worthy listening to all these guys' points of view.
Mm-hmm.
So very good talk. That I really think it was interesting, and I'm just trying to make the magnitude of that guy felt that he was a very interesting guy, and he did predict the earthquakes. So there's a whole story there. Anyway, he ended up getting death threats, supposedly, which is, I believe that's true. And he had to pull finger and change his group name and everything.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, big story there.
Yeah.
Okay, so next one, your life is stolen without a thanks. That's Alan Watt talking about how their system works in detail to gather data on the people, probably including some governments, because a lot of them are all compartmentalized. So it just takes massive data gathering to get the pulse of the public, right? On a mass scale.
About some of this, didn't we? Yeah, we just had a talk about this too. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's that's a vital thing. I didn't know this existed. It was right on my face, and now it
Mm-hmm.
makes sense. Like the survey says, hey, we're broadcasting standards. Have we breached broadcasting standards? You ring 0800 blah 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 blah. So little granny rings up and goes, and they go, how old are you and what's your name? And they get her data, and then and then she
Sure.
goes, yeah, I'm not very happy about what you said there. You swore, and that's not good enough, and all that. And they think, oh well, okay, their generation's going to die soon, and no one
Yeah.
else is ringing in. You see, so all of this they take in their data banks to know how to push the propaganda. If you don't
Right.
get feedback on the propaganda, you don't know how effective it is. So if people know this, we can stop it. All you do is tell them nothing. They can't force you into saying, "Oh, I think you're very good, thanks," and I'll tell
Right.
you more. Tell them
Mm-hmm.
nothing, and then they can't know what's going on. That's why they're shitting in New Zealand, because people are really sick of the government here, and they do a census and people aren't doing it.
Oh
And
wow.
then they turn
Yeah.
around the media and blame the government, say it's their fault. No, it
Oh
isn't. The
yeah.
people are
The
fucking going
questioning
fuck
was
off.
wrong or something like that. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, the census over here, the questions are getting more invasive.
Oh yeah.
They want to know about your sexual relations, and they want to know if you're thinking about going transgender and all that stuff. So it's getting insane.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next one. Alan Watt, he who controls the past controls the future. Very good talk there too. Very good. And in fact, I'm pretty sure that talk goes into the left-right paradigm to some degree in the elite. You got the Fabian Society and you got the Round Table Society, which is Alfred Milner, which is linked to Cecil Rhodes, the big money boys. So the
Yep.
right wing is the money boys, the left wing is the social scientists.
Yeah. I'm
Bertrand
very
Russell.
familiar with the. I'm very familiar with the Fabian Society. I'm not familiar with the Round Table.
Yep. Yeah, I've got a book here on the Fabian Society we can go into sometime.
Yep.
So yeah, Bertrand Russell, George Bernard Shaw, those are two main figures of the Fabian Society, and they're heavy socialistic.
Oh yeah. That's
They got
essentially
they're
the
pushing the stuff.
underlying agenda of the entire thing is that exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
So next one. So this other one, bushfires, birds, biochemical wars. So that's the more chemical side of things. On a
So
lot
what
of
was your
topics.
thought on the picture though, real quick? Because this picture
Oh,
is quite interesting for he who controls the past controls the future.
oh yeah, the Queen with the Joker
Yeah.
smile. Yeah, well, the
Yeah.
joke's on you. The
Yeah.
joke's on you, man.
Sure.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
joke's on you. You bought into it, so they don't care.
Yeah.
And it kind of reminds me because people have commented on our last video because we mentioned Israel, and I just want to make it clear with anyone listening and anyone that's pigeonholed me into something that they don't know. I don't, as I said, I don't get into shop fronts. I don't talk about Israel. I don't really, we did the other day, but that's not really what I tend to talk about much. I'm not in a group. I don't belong to groups, and I don't join groups, and I don't join the fighting between groups. So if you use J word people, if you use Russians, you use, I don't care, Red Indians and Chinese, I don't really care. They're all people, and I'm not joining that fight. I'm trying to figure out how we can break free of that. I'm not pro Israel. I'm not pro anything. I'm anti crap and bullshit. That's all. I'm not anti-Semitic because people think, oh, you talk about Israel, you're anti-Semitic. No, I'm not any of that. We're
Mm-hmm.
just simply talking about what I like to talk about is just the system itself. Even the Queen, I couldn't care less. They are what they are. Deal with it. Deal with them if you can. I don't think you can, but so because I just don't want to be pigeonholed that way. So don't be offended if you think we're heading into some, or I'm heading into some area that's trying to pigeonhole groups and I'm against them, because I'm just not. So I'd just like to make that clear.
Well said.
Yeah. So what else? Global Elite 1.1 was a clearer version of an introduction to Global Elite discussion, and that's got Trump on there because that was when he was elected.
Mm. Trump
It
the
was at the time he
squids.
was elected. Yeah. So pretty good talk. Again, similar to what we're doing now, maybe a bit different. Real government, that was a good talk. Alan Watt, real government, another one, on top of giving you more information.
Yeah.
Selective talk. Next one, Architects of Western Decline, a study on the Frankfurt School and cultural Marxism. It's only 28 minutes, 29 and a half an hour, and it's gives you a very good detailed view of an introduction to, again, behind the scenes of the Frankfurt School. And these people were kicked out, and the Frankfurt School was shut down by Hitler. Well, I'm not going to go into all that stuff again, but and they went to America and they set up. They went through the whole West really, but they went through America because America's the target. The rest of the colonies are already pretty much dealt with, and they went to America and they went through your universities to teach your children, and now you get seeing the effects of that cultural Marxism. And it's deep stuff, man. It really is. So that's a good introduction there.
Okay.
Next one, Edward. See, these are all similar topics, but very different. They're all
Right.
related to the world system, but
Mm-hmm.
some of these things people have never heard of. G. Edward Griffin is a superb researcher, superb speaker. He's been doing this for years and years and years and years, and he's got his own flavor. He's not right on everything, but he's fucking very, very worthy of listening. And so he talks to you about the facts of communism. And this is old. This is like, what is it? It doesn't have a date. It's something like about 1960s, late 60s, early 70s. I think he's doing this talk. It's black
Oh
and
wow.
white,
Yeah.
and he's warning you about things that we're seeing today. So it really gives people a perspective of what's been happening properly and where we are today in the world. And then you can think, is it too late? Well, I don't know. Is it? Like people, should we give up?
Yeah.
I don't know. Should you?
Yeah.
No, of course not.
Poor old G. Edward Griffin there too. He was on a. He was on. I can't remember what show it was on, but just recently he was on somebody's show, like a podcast, and man, the poor guy's starting to look kind of old. I hate to put it. I hate to say that, but he's
Yep.
getting there. Yeah.
Yeah. So support him. He's done a lot for helping
Oh yeah.
for the good.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
time's ticking. I'm gonna go a bit quicker now because we're getting the
Okay.
foundation.
Yep.
So obedience to authority, absurdity of trained majority. Another Alan Watt talk goes into Stanley Milgram, who is the guy that was behind the electrical shock experiments to test on the obedience of the person electrocuting the poor victim. Everyone will get paid. It's no animals were killed in this show, but it's just to show you how far people will go with obedience. So good
Mm-hmm.
talk, very good. Uh, then we've got George Bush himself and George Bush daddy telling you about the new world order.
Right.
And he's got a smile on his face, and he said he's quite cocky about it. You'll notice he says when it happens, and it will happen.
Yeah.
He's quite adamant. So yeah, very funny.
It's as if he
I
wanted
mean,
to reassure somebody, and he knew
yeah.
somebody specific was listening, and he wanted to reassure them that it will
Yeah.
happen. Yes.
Yeah. And I mean, hey, if we say New World Order, we're a conspiracy theorist. If he says it, no, it's real.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Next one, facts, proof, and evidence, boundaries, and eminence is just my little take on Mark Stevens, which is Fabrice Bardsley and Helen, I think her name was, who they're sort of, I haven't seen a lot of them lately. They were mainly on Facebook. But old video, but very interesting because they're newbies, and it was fairly new back then. This is quite a few years ago, and they're just telling you how they went through the procedure of Mark Stevens techniques back then, which is similar to today, and the rigmarole they went through, and that they did succeed. They beat the system, So it's quite a good talk. Next one, global elite discussion. This was with Popeye, who I'm pretty sure we'll get on here at some stage. He's really good.
Mm-hmm.
He's practicing law, which is interesting because he's a bit like us. He's a seer that can he knows a lot about the occult side of law. That's why me and him are actually quite good friends. And he is doing though the law school. I'm not. He's doing that. So he's doing it with an eye to see, and he's embarrassing his professors everywhere, as you can imagine. So
Yeah.
because he's asking those uncomfortable questions. So we just talk in that one on contracting. Because to us that's how you do it. That's how you win. That's how you get your skill. And so he knows that, I know that, and we talk about it just as an introduction for people because a lot of people don't know a lot about contracts, especially implied contracts and hidden contracts and things. So big topic there. Very good to know though. Next one, Inquisition Century 21 is a play on that. What was the Inquisition? That was the Pope, right? Kiss my foot or I'll cut your head off and torture you with it, with your head.
Mm-hmm.
So Century 21, that's Agenda 21, right? Which is another topic.
Sure.
United Nations Agenda 21, agenda for the 21st century,
Yep.
100-year plan, right in your face.
Yep.
Next one, what to do with the New World View, is for people that have gone through looking at a lot of his videos, and then what the fuck do I do? That's the question next. Is I know all this shit. What am I going to
Right.
do with it? So,
Yeah.
and and it is daunting. So, and that's why a lot of people don't do it actually because it's too daunting. But what do you do with the New World View? And it's interesting talk. Next talk again. What's that? Can't remember that one.
The state of the world broken down as the truth
I think
unfurled.
that was I think that was Alan again. Hang on. Yeah, yeah, that was with Alan Williams again. That was probably the last one I did with Alan Williams. So interesting talk. Probably not one of my better ones, but it's there. Okay, quickly, the next one. Again, I mean, I like to just play around with words. People that know me know that. I like to play with words. So I thought I'll just, how everyone's like doing texting little letters and that, like you were doing
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the fuck? So I go MLMMMC. It's like, what the fuck is that? Well, it stands for multi level matrix of mass mind control.
Oh. Yeah. I never would have figured that out. Never would have
Yeah.
figured that out.
Yeah. I think I put it in the description. If I don't, I'll put it in comments.
Okay.
But very good talk that, again, it's kind of, and I put the screen thing on top as They Live. That screenshot is from the movie They Live, John Carpenter's They Live back in the 1980s. Probably, I think it was 1984 too, funnily enough. But that is what it is. It doesn't necessarily mean there's aliens. We don't need to go into that. But the point being is that if you know what's going on, you'll see the world like that. It's just a shop front
Mm-hmm.
with subliminal messages that gets us into a fugue of confusion that we sleepwalk along and we accept, and adapt to the changes. Very good talk, that one. Next one, Panoramical Politics. I think that was a Popeye one. Good talk. Um, Yeah, now this next one, very important and very high knowledge. This one, incredibly high knowledge, probably, and I've got the book that he's talking about. So it's called Technique of Mass Suggestion, Truth Deflection. And so his talk, Alan Watt again, is talking about Jack C. Lull and his books. And all through the video, I put all his books up. And just the titles of the book should shock you because this guy is an absolute genius
Hmm.
with social control. They talk about a thing called technique, at the top, and it goes into technology. But technology is not just physical. It's words. It's persuasive, Bernaysian techniques. It's social techniques. That's what we're talking about. But it's also scientific techniques and integrational techniques and so he goes into a lot of stuff, man. Religious techniques. So
Yeah.
um, very good talk. One you'll go back to if you're serious a lot of times because there's a lot in there.
45 minutes just crammed full of information.
Crammed full. Yeah,
Yeah.
crammed full. And stuff that most have never, ever heard. And even his book, just for the record, his book, The Technological Society, I took away with me on holiday one time and I read the whole thing. It's a pretty big book, but it was not too bad. It wasn't that hard going. It was some of these truth books, like higher knowledge books. They're kind of like meditation. You don't really want to do it. You don't want to waste your time meditating, so you don't want to waste your time reading. I could be doing something else, but when you do it, you feel good. Especially if you are a seeker, you feel good. You go, man, this is really good knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something about these things that are very nourishing in a way. Okay, so next one, R.D. Laing. R.D. Laing was one of the founders of the Tavistock Institute in London. It was called Tavistock Square. They always have squares as well, it's Freemasonic. But yeah, so he was one of the founders. Now, he had a think tank with Bertrand Russell of the Fabian Society, and they had a Socratic group, which is what we've found is brilliant.
Wow.
Socratic group, for those who don't know, is a group where you just question
Sure.
things down,
Yeah.
right? So it's a think tank. And so who have we got there? We've got Bertrand Russell, who's a uh, inbred, hypo intelligent, scientific freak of nature, you could call him. And then we have R.D. Laing, who's a very unique thinker in psychology of healing. And a lot of his work, if you look, and there's not that much on YouTube, but if you do find it, his topics are very interesting and you've never thought of them. Like he goes into showing you the trauma of birth in the system, not just the trauma of birth, that's bad enough, but the trauma of birth in the system, especially in Britain and Scotland, England, you know. So things we've never even thought about that are happening that
Mm-hmm.
affect us when we grow up. So this particular talk I've called prison thinking because he is going into trying to explain to you through history and his knowledge of psychology on how we are trapped again psychologically. And his speech straight away, as he says, I hate to tell you, but how do you enjoy your tyranny? Right. Most people are going around thinking they're free, and he's telling you how do you enjoy your tyranny. It's
Right.
not a that's not a complaint. That's a sympathy. He says it's a gesture of sympathy. So that's his view of it, and why? Because from his perspective, he's saying all these people are locked up can't cope with reality. The people in the mental asylums are awake. They're the ones that see the world as it is, and they can't cope. He says it's a natural reaction to an insane society. Huxley said the same thing. Aldous Huxley said the same thing. So people shouldn't be accepting these things, but they do. See, so there's a problem going on here. There's a deeper problem in humanity that needs to be cut out. There's a false reality that needs to be cut out. That's a Gordian knot that's getting people to self-destruct, basically. Piece by piece. You know, so it's fascinating, that whole genre. Very interesting. Uh, Next one, Edward Bernays. I'll make that quick. A lot of you guys have heard of him. He wrote the book Propaganda, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's not him talking, but that's an expert on him. Just an introduction. Next one is very good, which was Yuri Bezmenov. A lot of you have heard of him. A lot of people haven't. Yuri Bezmenov was an ex-KGB Soviet subverter, as he calls
Mm-hmm.
himself. And so he defected from the Soviet Union. And so because he's another guy who understands Soviet mind control and techniques to bring and subvert a country, i.e. America, he's getting over there telling you how it is. So check out his work. Very good. Very good stuff. David Icke actually brought him to light. Those of us that have been following this a long time, David Icke actually brought the presence of him to light, from my memory.
That's
And I
a
just,
um, that's a good interview too, by the way. I would imagine almost anybody that has ever really just entertained the truther movement has seen some clips, from this interview. But I've watched the entire interview. It's been a long time, but I have watched the entire interview. If you have not, I definitely recommend going and watching that entire thing.
Yep.
It's very
Yep.
eye opening for sure.
Yep. And if you like it, look at all his videos. He's got about three, I think, out there, three separate videos, maybe in parts, and you'll see he's wearing different clothes, of course.
Yeah.
But look at all of them, because some of them he goes into religion and how that works and why it can be important and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So check out all his work. He's even got a book as well that he wrote. On to the next one. So yeah, this one was good. I mean, as time's going by, I'm maturing in my ability to make videos. Before I was starting with the, twigs and bloomin' stones. Now I've got like pens and calculators. So
Yeah.
So this one's cool. It's fascism where socialism begets fascio-socialism. And so what it is, and it's timely because 5 months ago was when people were talking about Brexit, which is leaving the EU. And so I put it
Right.
up and said, this has got to be the right time for this.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes into showing you how the European Union was set up, by Goldstein in particular. He's a big player in it.
Sure.
You'll see. So very good video. I'm quite happy with that one. And it does give you insight into how socialism or communism and fascism work together. It's more detailed in how fascism and socialism work together. Why? Because that's what the EU is. It's
Right.
a new Soviet. It's a new Soviet that's run by capitalists. Big money people control it. Yeah.
It's a new topic for me. I just started to go and actually read some of the documentation. I've always heard it referenced, but I've just never really entertained it too much. But I know that supposedly, anyways, the clergy plan has had something to do with the creation of the EU as well. Well, I mean, certainly it did. Just what we make of it is another story. I don't want to comment too much because I have not really done enough studying on that yet to formulate a intelligent opinion. But I know that for those out there that are, when they hear about the creation of the EU, they're going to go, oh yeah, but the clergy plan. So that's something that I'm looking at as well. Have you ever really done any research on that?
I've come across it, but it's not really to me as important as the mechanics of it.
Sure.
Like
Sure.
the clergy plan will give you insight, but this particular point of view fits a lot of it together that gives people more useful insight. Most of the stuff is to give you useful insight. An example of that too is that when you look at the elite, even the negative side of it, you can see sometimes them using techniques that you can do yourself. You don't have to use them for evil, but you'll see that they're using business techniques. And you think, fuck, how did they do that? They're just a human. How can they do that and I can't? Well, because they know shit you don't know, and they say shit you don't say, and then therefore they get what they want. So you learn a lot of power by studying this shit too. Personal power. It's not all negative.
Yeah.
It's just that we're ignorant. We are made. Bertrand Russell said, people aren't born stupid. They're made stupid by education.
That's an interesting concept, but it is absolutely true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you're born sentient. You're born with survival instincts.
Sure.
You go to the mother, the father. That's your best guardian, and there's how the matrix forms. And then you grow up, and if you haven't learnt much, if you're honest, if you haven't learnt a lot and you've followed everyone else, they don't know. They're just being taught by their schoolmates. And their parents were schooled too, which is hopeless. I mean, look at the education system. It's hopeless. It's bare minimum.
Yeah.
It really is. And a lot of it's fluff. I remember in school, a lot of it was fluff. I may as well have been doing something else. In fact, I did. I'd bring my guitar and say, I'm out of here. I'm going to go and play.
Yeah. In fact, it's funny you say that because when I was in high school, I had a friend, because I play guitar, and I had another friend that also played guitar. And so, as you know, musicians, tend to become good friends with each other. So I had a friend, it was his senior year in high school, but I was only a junior. But because he was a senior, he got to get out halfway through the day. So I would sneak in the back of his car and like we'd drive out of there and I'd go to his house and we'd play guitar
Yeah,
for the second half of the day. I'd just skip out of school. So yeah, that was
lovely.
what was jokingly for you was very much truth for me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
it is. I love those days. You know,
sure.
it was social, eh? It was,
Yeah.
and even that's changed. You know, don't know about America, and I know Australia. You can still do a lot of gigs, and it's acceptable.
Oh
But
yeah.
over here, a lot of the circuit that was pretty good. You could make a living off music in New Zealand. You could be busy even in Auckland. Now has probably up to two thirds of the venues that was suitable for live bands is now gone, and it's backed up with all the new dance technological
Yeah.
music,
Yeah.
so it's a bit of a shame.
It's the same here. There was one particular venue here in Birmingham that was called the High Point, and it was a hole in the wall place. Every time you went, you would typically have to, provide some cables because the sound guy didn't have what he needed and stuff, and the sound was terrible.
Yeah.
However, it had this culture that everybody loved. I mean, we had shows
Mm.
there every weekend. My band at the time, we played there every damn chance we had, and yeah, I mean, they eventually closed down. I mean, just there's no money. The internet has essentially ruined the music industry, in my opinion. And I mean, it's the internet, like all things, has done good and bad, but it's definitely ruined the music industry. But that's getting way off topic. I just yeah.
Yeah. Oh, it's another good topic. Maybe sometime we can have a jam online.
Hey,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Be cool.
yep.
Yeah. So the final ones are really, Creature from Jekyll Island. A lot of people have heard of that. A lot of people have heard of it, but they don't go and look at it or listen to
Mm-hmm.
it or read it or whatever. So check it out. It's good stuff. It's more knowledge that people don't know.
Sure.
Next one, current issues with TV. This was just an old video I found that I thought I'll put it up there. I hadn't really been doing much activity for a while. I was a bit busy, so let's put that up there. It was quicker to put up,
Mm-hmm.
but good talk. A little bit of issues at the start, but pretty good. Then the next one, of course, is our last show. So,
Yeah, this one right here is complete rubbish. I wouldn't watch this one.
yeah. Well, I mean, you got to get the bugs out, and
Yeah,
I'm sure things will get better with time. We'll start to get a better system and stuff. But we really have to get to know each other as hosts for other people, so the
sure,
hosts know what we're about, and so
sure.
we know what each other are about, and
Mm-hmm.
so the audience knows what we're about. A lot of you have never heard of us before, so
Yep.
I can promise you that if we do stick together, this will be a good show.
Oh
We'll
yeah.
the more support we get, the more we will want to put into it. So
Yep.
let's hope.
So just to bounce back to that concept too of everyone getting to know us, there's still, I mean, the reality is that just going through your channels here and just looking at the things, for one, the hours and hours that have of just viewing these videos, and it's clear that there are definitely differences as to where you have dedicated your time of research and where I have dedicated my time of research, and so for the listeners out there, this is likely going to be kind of how the show plays out. Is I have always been a researcher of events, researcher of different facts and different things. I enjoy just dry facts. I don't know why I like it. I like statistics. I like facts. I like looking at things through a very scientific perspective, I guess you could say. And so that's just kind of the angle I go at things. So I really like the fact that I can bring information like that to the table and then have your help to analyze it from a much broader perspective, I suppose I could say. Uh, so like we were talking about earlier, everything, your perspective, a lot of your videos are very timeless. Your perspective is from a timeless and understanding the mechanism and the system as a whole, as to where my research has always been
Yep.
into how does this individual, how does the World Bank work? How does the IMF work? How do these things work? Or the Fabian Society. So I look at these very individual things, and at best, maybe I try to understand how the different, say, financial organizations work together, what they do. Uh, I have never gotten too far into chasing the rabbit hole down to the lever pullers, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you definitely need to look at the details too, and that is obviously up to what people are into. Like how people that are researchers come out with their own flavor because they've chosen to go down a certain pathway,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll have a lot of facts there. Um, for me, of probably the formula I've chosen, which is I think a good one, is to try and aim high, even though knowing that it is going to be difficult going. Like learning from a very skilled person in a field is hard to even, you got to learn their language even to some degree. So knowing that it will be hard, but setting the challenge to go high to get higher information, not just shallow shit, is hard. You cannot avoid that. You
Right.
know. And so you're doing, you have to look at the details too. But I think that as you have done, like you said, you've looked at the World Bank, the Fabian Society, etc. You can already see connections,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
and so that's why you chose them. So in a way, you're building your own big picture. So what
Yeah.
I've done, again, going back to my videos, hopefully it is higher knowledge, but people can put them together hopefully, and at least get more of an idea where they can then move forward and say, "Oh, yeah, right now I know that I've got a shortcut." You know. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, when I was looking at your channels, that's the first time I looked through that. That's exactly what I was thinking. Is this is more or less a library of information, and it's all designed and placed in a format that will allow you to make the connections between all of these different topics, all of these different uh, well, mechanisms, I suppose, and it puts them all together in a way that you can just really in a linear form start from the very beginning to the end and have sort of a big picture. Now, of course, that's going to take a very long time to go through all those videos, but
Yep.
that's what I
The
gathered from it.
Yeah, the human condition is what I like to call it too. It's
Sure.
the human condition. So it's not looking at races in particular and singling them out
Yeah.
necessarily, although that's another deep topic. But it's really just looking at the general human condition, especially in the West, because I'm not um, recultured in Asian or Islamic um, cultures. I have been to Asia and Egypt too, by the way. I've been to Egypt, all up and down Egypt. So
Hmm.
I've done a lot of physical studies in that and traveled quite a bit.
Sure.
Uh, yeah, and also, yeah, I will have another show coming, another good Alan Watt one for those that do like his work. I've got another one that's going to be very, very interesting, and it's quite deep, and it goes into uh, going into documents and books from 1920s, that far back, of elite talking about their plan on the food supply, basically, of the world, and how it's going to integrate in everything in society. So
Hmm.
very good because you can see it happening today. You know? So
Well,
cool.
we've been going a little while here. I suppose let's switch over to the live. We'll switch over here in a minute to the live stream, live voice. Let's see. It looks like everyone right now is in the pre-screening voice. Um, hmm. I
I
guess
can
we
move
can go
over
there.
if you want.
What's that?
I can move everybody over here if you'd like me to.
No, not here, not the live show. They definitely won't be able to speak in here unless they are a moderator. This one's completely blocked. But slide them down to live voice. See, you see right above that live voice.
All right, got you. Stand by.
Yep, I'm gonna start sliding them all down too. Whoop.
Yep. And I'll be back in a sec, eh? I'll be back.
Okay. All right, sounds good. These guys are all like, hey, what's going on? We're getting moved. All right, guys, I'm going to swap over there, and let me go ahead and transfer over. We're going to fade over. Whoop, there we are. Okay. And I'm going to kick it on over there. What's going on, everybody? How the hell are you?
How you doing? I'm doing good. Yourself?
Oh, man, I'm doing pretty good. So, yeah, we just moved you guys over. Sorry about that. Y'all were in the pre-screening voice chat there and moved everyone down here to live voice. Everyone that's on YouTube, if you guys want to come in and just have an open dialogue, this is the portion of the podcast where anybody is welcome to come and have conversation. We can talk about any topics you guys want to talk about. When you get here, you cannot jump directly into this voice chat and begin to speak. There is a role that we must assign for you. So if you're looking at this,
nigga.
that's why.
100% nigga.
Yep. There we go. And that's why. So you'll see what I'll do here. We'll just get rid of that. Boom. Now he can listen, but he can't speak. That's how that works. Okay. So you have to come right here to pre-screening text. Come down here, drop a line, and just say, "Hey, I would like to have this live stream rule." Like this guy right here. He says, "Hey, I'm muted." Let's see. Is he actually muted? He actually is muted. So I don't know why. I guess one of the mods. Do you guys know why gayest whatever is muted? Do you guys know?
Shouldn't be. He was talking earlier.
All right.
Yeah, I just had a conversation with him.
All right, he's not muted now. We'll give him the appropriate role. Live stream. Now he should be able to speak in here.
So you guys were talking earlier, and I was listening the entire time about, and you mentioned the Socratic method, and Cliff was talking about everything that you see is basically a shop front for what people's arguments are. The entire world is like that. The view of governments, right, left, pro-government, anti-government, second amendment, whatever you want, whatever the topic is, it's all a storefront. So you basically just see what the person presenting the argument wants you to see, and if you apply the Socratic method to that shop front, you can actually peruse the aisles and actually get down to the actual arguments and the logic behind those arguments relatively quickly. So if you combine the Socratic method with that shop front analogy, it works out really, really well.
Sure. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And that's actually something I've been really, working on interiorly with my own mind lately. That's something I'm still trying to wrap my mind around better.
The Socratic method?
No, well, yes, but yeah. So I would actually say that yes, not necessarily an understanding of what the Socratic method is. Of course, I understand what that is, but really trying to completely reprogram my way of thinking in practice on a daily basis to utilize that and not just jump to conclusions because of my,
Conditioning.
Yeah, exactly.
I would define it as you are finding the definition and the edges of the shop front. And there's another way which I found is fascinating. It starts to get into when someone studies law, which is a huge subject, right? It goes at it's like religion. Which one do you start with? When you get into that, you'll get into public-private. And public-private, as I said before, the public is generally quite fictional. But it has an edge and it can be defined, and private is defined as well. So it does take time. It takes a long time to finally figure all this shit out.
I'm struggling with the same thing myself.
Before we get too far down, I know everyone's usually using the pre-screening text. If you guys can, from here on out, if you're going to drop links, etc., pictures, please use the live stream text chat. That is the one I'm going to be streaming. That way, you also have to have the live stream role to write in that chat, to prevent people from trolling like we just had a minute ago. So, yeah. Oh, for you guys that have been sending me links, thank y'all. I hope y'all heard me at the beginning of the very very beginning of the podcast, I've had a lot of people here just, I mean, sending me a lot of, articles and stuff that's going on. There's a lot of movement right now, I would say. And I suppose there's always a lot going on, but with just within the past week or so, there just seems to be a lot going on, globally with, I don't know, I just see things moving rather quickly. So even, Cliff, when we're talking about the mechanisms and the way that they do things, I am seeing a lot of these headline news stories with things going on around the world. There, some of the technology that we talked about the other night is now, so for example, DARPA, the thing that I put into, I talked about last night on my quick little live stream, that kind of stuff going on over in the Middle East with Iran. There's just a lot of movement right now.
Yes, there is, and I don't think it's gonna fare too well.
Well, so that is, of course, my concern is that when I see things ramp up to the speed that they have, it just kind of, brings into question what's coming, I suppose. And maybe just having a better understanding of how all of these things connect together would definitely help with that. But because I see so much movement globally and so many just massive things that would usually be, headline news, they're not, because there's just so much to talk about. There's just so much going on, so they get buried, in the rest of the conversation.
True.
That, and also a lot of it doesn't fit into their mainstream narrative.
Well, that's literally the goal of DARPA, is to eliminate things that do not fit within the mainstream narrative, or DARPA's new program, not DARPA in general.
Yeah.
If you guys did not, I don't know if y'all didn't catch the video that I put out last night, go back and check it out when you get the chance. It's pretty. I haven't had the opportunity yet to go back and do further research, but for just basically what I know is what I put in the video last night. But just getting up to date on that would be pretty crucial, I think, for everybody.
Well, for everyone who didn't watch the video, can you give a brief synopsis or a summation of the video?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so DARPA has a new program coming out, and supposedly they're creating this new software, but it's, again, just the other night we talked about Unit 8200, we talked about the NSA, how they work together to send all of our information. I think everybody here that's in this voice chat probably understands that the technology that exists now is already monitoring any information that travels over a cell phone tower, through your internet, through your cable. All that is collected and saved, in a massive database. I think we all know that by now. IPAC, of course, has has technology that we found out in some of the Al Jazeera documentaries that was leaked out. We found out that IPAC has technology that can alert them when BDS movements begin a new campaign of any type. IPAC is alerted immediately, and they can begin their smear campaigns or whatever they're going to do. So we know that the technology exists to monitor social media and give alerts. Now, of course, with something like IPAC, their search parameters can be narrowed down to, only the groups that they put out there. But however, what's going on with DARPA, they have this new program that they're putting it out that is going to monitor all forms of media. So this is supposed to, I suppose, cover even mainstream media, but also social media, any kind of independent journalist. And what it's going to do is it's going to analyze the language used in that media. It's going to analyze the information that is going to be put out, and it is going to reference it with, I suppose, just the main narrative of what's going on. This is the way I'm perceiving this anyways, is that it's going to just compare it to the mainstream narrative, and if they feel like it is malicious or it is contradictory to facts, then their goal is to be able to stifle this information and silence it, is essentially what their website is saying, straight off the DARPA website. So what this means is that DARPA's new program is going to be a literal Orwellian style truth filter. Okay, so if you guys read the book, remember the guy, he's going through the news, he's shredding, the old history that he doesn't want you to, they don't want their people to remember this, and now they're reprinting history and putting it out as they want you to believe it. It's going to be very similar to that. And if you're an independent journalist and you want to speak the truth like we are right now and putting things on YouTube, well, this new DARPA program, it'll be flagged by them because it does not align with their mainstream narrative, and it essentially it's looking as if it's going to just be silenced because you will be flagged as malicious or polarizing, according to the terminology that they use on their website.
Yeah, I agree.
With which part?
With all of it, basically.
Well, okay. It's their website. I would definitely go to the DARPA website and look at it. In the video that I dropped yesterday, in the description, if you just want to go, you don't want to hear me blabber on about it, just go to the video, go to the description. There's a link to an RT News article, and there's also a link to the DARPA website that you can go and actually look at that yourself.
Okay, I will. I'll check it out later.
Excellent.
So,
Isn't this the same type of thing that they've done in the past, like Stalin, Mao, Hitler, etc., etc.? Silence the people.
Of course.
History repeats. It really does.
yes, it does. History does repeat.
It may have been what they used to do in the past, but you have to also account for the advances in technology, social media, the dissemination of information by individuals themselves and not just corporations or news agencies. So with a new computer algorithm that can actually scan all of the media and multimedia at one time, that DARPA would have to actually step up their game to actually get to all of the information throughout the entirety of the internet, because the internet is a huge place.
Oh yeah.
So basically, they're gonna let channels like the Young Turk.
Your mic cut out.
Yeah, you cut out there, buddy. So I think what he was getting at, though, is they're going to allow channels like the Young Turks or, mainstream media can go on and on and on about Trump and the Russian collusion for years on end. That'll be perfectly acceptable. But
Yeah, I mean, a good question.
I got cut off. Sorry.
No worries.
A good question for what you were saying, Jeremy, when you said the mainstream narrative is, the question would be, what is the mainstream narrative that they push, and then what is the thing that they will silence?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the thing that is global is socialism. So if people know socialism and understand how it works and where it came from, they'll see the definition of that straight away. And anything that is anti-socialism will be silenced or demonized.
Sure.
Basically, that is it. That's it.
and that's actually going to lead back, because it's just been on the table, that's going to lead right back to freedom is slavery, right? So for us freedom lovers, when we say that socialism is a form of slavery because you are literally stealing my money from me in order to give it to somebody else, and I don't have a say-so in this. I mean, I must go to work, I must pay my taxes, and then you're going to take that from me. Well, that's quite literally the definition of slavery. So freedom is slavery. And now what we're looking at, though, is that yes, the language is going to be changed to the extent to where we are going to see society tell us that no, if you oppose socialism, then you are just a cruel person. That is hate speech. That is hateful, that you would not want to, that you would want your time and your labor and your assets all for yourself. That is selfish and that is hateful. And and so you must be silenced for the better good of society.
I've even had people say to me when I say I'm against socialism, they say, hey, that's not right. If you did that, you'd hate people. You'd hate all people. That's his theory of socialism. I mean, I do love people. I get pissed off with people because sometimes they piss me off. I think everyone can relate to that. But generally, I love people. If I didn't, I wouldn't fucking be here,
Yep.
So, but it's a socialist.
Me off.
Bureaucrats? Yeah.
There you go. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Well, that's the thing when people say that you either hate people because you hate socialism or you love people because you love socialism. It's a false dichotomy. When there's a third option, you love people, but you just want them to work for themselves and not have to rely on someone else. There's an entirely different option other than the two that whoever is presenting the argument of socialism is actually giving you or actually allowing you to see, which is limiting on like free speech in a way, because if you only have two options and not a third, what are you to do in that situation?
Sure. Yeah. I absolutely agree. And actually, to sort of bounce off of that, I have never really done too great of a introduction of myself as far as the podcast goes, and so I'd like to clarify that really, mentally, any position that I have solely because I believe that it is what's best for everybody. Like, it is because I believe that this is what's good for you and your family and your children. I believe that this is what's good for people overseas. Even when I criticize Israel and the things that they are doing, or I criticize, Iran or anybody, it's not because I hate them. It's because I think, hey, even your country would be better off if you weren't doing these things, right? So, I mean, you guys are clearly living outside of truth. So, I mean, your life cannot be whole if you're living outside of truth. You cannot be living a good life if you're living outside of truth. That's just the way I feel about things, and that is the foundation of where I try to base all of my thoughts on, and my beliefs, I suppose you could say.
Nice. Yeah, that, I mean, wholeness and truth does make sense, because if something isn't whole, it isn't complete. And if it's not complete, it's not showing its full self. Therefore, how can it be the truth?
Sure. Now, going back to socialism, and Cliff, you've mentioned it multiple times, and we are going to have to get into it deeper. Socialism and this push we see for socialism is absolutely tied to Agenda 21 in every way. It's by no means a mistake that this Green New Deal that we're seeing here in the United States being talked about so much is a push for zero emissions, and we have to save the planet. Oh, and by the way, here, have some rampant socialism to go with it.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it is the going back to the shop front thing again. Um, Climate change, I call it chains, climate chains, sustainability, carbon footprints, uh, uh, global warming, maybe, or global freezing, or extreme weather, which is a topic in itself, of course, is the shop front for behind the scenes of that shop front of Agenda 21. And easy go on the wiki, will tell you all about it. Behind the scenes is lies, basically, massive lies.
Mm-hmm.
That and you can confirm a lot of this from Tim Ball. Dr. Tim Ball is just one of them. There's a few of them out there, but he's a particularly good one. Because he is an insider that defected, and he's winning court cases too now against these scumbags. So a lot of it is known lies that are techniques. The lies are not just put out random, they're techniques. And this Agenda 21 was thought up in the Club of Rome in Brussels, right? Which are the guys that run the EU, by the way.
Yep.
But they don't just run that, they've got their hand in everything. They're a bit like the CFR, the Club of Rome, and they probably work with the CFR. So they came up with this plan, and the book on it was called The First Global Revolution. Right? Now go back to Aldous Huxley. I already told you. He said, oh, it's the final revolution. So they all talk revolution. Now, most revolutions are bloodless. You got the feminist revolution, you got the drug revolution, this revolution, that revolution, all conducted by the entertainment industry. And that is what's so shocking, and why I would say, if you don't like what you hear, you better back out, because the whole world has been pulled over your eyes. They'll work Agenda 21 with the movies. and books and magazines and radio and that. And it's rife here.
Sure.
This is why people, and then people go, but it's a lie, it's a lie. Yeah, but it's a truth, it's a truth, it's a truth. And because it's all around you, the lie becomes a truth. And the people that the bureaucrat insects that orchestrate it, they believe in the lie. They start to believe the lie. Why? Because it's in their interest to believe the lie.
Yeah.
So Agenda 21 is the agenda for the 21st century. It's a 100-year plan to bring in what they call the New World Order, which is a standardized one world system, one government, one bank, one religion, one shoe shop, right? Made in China,
And
or take your pick. One hat shop, one shirt shop, uniform,
yeah.
right? Peace, which is absence of competition. But the key thing that people don't get is that it's a standardized world that they want. This is really this is what they've wrote about. And the reason that they want a standardized world, which means when you travel to China or Thailand or Egypt or something, it'll pretty much be the same thing everywhere you go. Same
Yeah.
system, same shop, same uniform.
Yeah.
And what that does is because the religion and the entertainment culture work together with the culture, which is your surroundings, and this is why they want wars and shit, because it destroys the old buildings to bring in the new.
Yeah,
So,
true.
yeah, so once you get a world where they're trying to bring it into, you'll have nothing to compare to. If you go to China or Thailand or Egypt or India, it'll be the same system. So everyone will be free. See? But no one will know what reality is because we all have the same culture. That's what they're aiming for. That's what the New World Order is, and that is what they want this 100-year plan. By 2050, they want zero carbon, whatever the fuck that means,
Right.
because they'll stretch that too. So that is like when they pick up their clipboard and they say, now, have we actually made it to the goals? And you can see them saying sustainability goals. Sustainability for who? For them. For them. So you can be a more efficient slave and they'll go off into the future free. So it's their sustainability, not yours.
Yeah.
Crazy, yeah. So, and therefore you can get a better tyranny because the tyranny is a mental tyranny that everyone accepts. And if you've got nothing to compare to, and the whole world is pretty much in agreement. See, this is why it's a global movement. United Nations was set up to be the embryo of world government. It's
So
openly
here's a sort of interesting analogy. I'm going to bring you back to when I was in high school. Uh, when I worked for Pizza Hut. Okay, maybe it's not fixed. Sorry, guys, for y'all that are trying to post links in there. I thought I fixed that. I don't know. Maybe not. Anyways, so when I was in high school, I worked at Pizza Hut. One of the main things that Pizza Hut pushed about was not necessarily that, wow, we have to make great pizzas. We need to make awesome pizzas and we need to put them out efficiently. That was not their main thing. They said what we need is consistency. And when we say consistency, we mean consistency across all Pizza Huts. So it doesn't matter what Pizza Hut you go to, we want the experience and the food quality to be exactly the same. We want it to be uniform no matter what store you go to. And so
Exactly.
I think that's what we're going to see city to city, nation to nation. It's going to be that uniformity to where you'll have essentially the exact same experience no matter where you go in the world.
Yep. And since you brought up Pizza Hut, I'll put back in there. Back in that, go and watch the film Demolition Man, in 1998, I think it was, with Sylvester Stallone and Wesley Snipes. And you go in there and you'll see all of what I'm talking about with all the names of the people in the movie that represent Huxley's Brave New World. And in it, in Demolition Man, the head cop lady that is like the sidekick to Sylvester Stallone, her name is Dr. Huxley. No kidding. I mean, why'd they give her that name? And then they had Pizza Hut was their standardized restaurant. They said all the corporate wars of the past, because it's the year 2030. Yeah, you go into Pizza Hut and it's a tiny little serving, probably hyper expensive, and there's no cheese, no meat on the things. See, and they didn't tell you that, but it's in the movie, so you'll see it and you'll go, oh yeah. So when you grow up into that world, you go, well, that was how it was. This is meant to be.
I could be wrong, but wasn't Taco Bell the restaurant in that movie?
Nah, unless there's a Mandela effect, check it out because
No,
yeah,
that's
Yeah.
check
you
it out
don't.
because you'll see it.
Do you believe in the Mandela effect?
I think there's something to that. I'm not an expert in it, but I have seen strange things. I think there's something to it, possibly. Yeah.
Let me
Well,
give you
the
one story on the Mandela effect, if you don't mind. I would love to hear some, but this is almost why it's so convincing for me. And it's just this one, because a lot of the other ones I'm kind of like, I don't know, but this one was personal to me. I was in the Navy. I'm going to just tell you the story. I was in the Navy. I went and saw a friend of mine in Connecticut. Okay, so I went from Great Lakes, Illinois to Connecticut. When I was going back to the airport in New York, we drove by the Statue of Liberty. I've never actually been to the Statue of Liberty myself, but we drove by it. I could see it off in the distance. And she was telling me, hey, we went with some friends and uh, we got to go all the way up into the top of this thing and walk around up there. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. I've never been there before. Maybe I'll go one day. So as she's telling me this, later I find out after I'm looking at the Mandela effect, they said the top of the top of the Statue of Liberty has been closed for like decades. You haven't been able to go up there for a really long time.
no.
And
For no. After 2001, it's not that long. That was
Yeah.
recent.
well, this would have been 2006 that I
It
that
might
I
have it might have been open then. I'm not sure. 2006. I was a
when
kid.
was it
I
when
think
was
it,
it
it, it
closed?
was open. No, I think they closed it maybe around 2008, 2009 because they were showing destability things. You know people lie and people get confused, but people lie and the news is problem with the news is the
Okay,
news is just
so
telling
yeah,
so
so
many spots.
if that's the case, then I have no credible evidence for the Mandela effect. That's it. My
Yeah,
proof is debunked.
yeah, because the Mandela effect's not real. It's just a way for I think somebody came up with it to make money.
It's
It was a
entertaining
catch.
though. It sure is entertaining to look at.
Yeah, I agree. It is entertaining. And I'm just a kid, buddy.
What is the Mandela effect, Juan?
Bro, you guys are telling me it. Man, I'm learning.
Oh, okay, cool.
Hey, KN4, guess what? Your um, question is freaking opened up a huge can of worms. I just checked out Demolition Man Pizza Hut and it says Demolition Man 1993 Taco Bell / Pizza Hut swap. So someone is in there editing the bloody movie.
What?
Amazing. Yeah, the one I saw was a modern one. It was probably made. I don't know. It was a remaster or some shit. So
Interesting.
yeah. So the one I saw had Pizza Hut, and the one you saw, you weren't uh, wrong. It is Taco Bell, but they've changed it to Pizza Hut.
Wonder
So fuck
why.
knows. Yeah.
Now this is some straight up Pizza Hut supremacy bullshit. Now we that is straight up hate speech. Okay, Pizza Hut supremacy is not okay.
I'd like to see both parts of the movie because my point being is this. Remember I said Agenda 21 and that they put it in the movies. Uh, because of the global warming thing back in the 80s, they probably did global warming propaganda for the future with Taco Bell. And now they've changed it to climate change. They've got all these other new tenets. And so the propaganda of the food and everything in it was probably had to be changed because the agenda's changed. It could be that, very much so. One of the main tenets that's quite shocking with the Agenda 21 is this: they want to totally cull back beef farming and sheep farming
Yep.
and anything of good protein in the food. And a lot of vegetarians say, "Yay, they should do that." And it's like, yeah, well, easy for you to say. You're a vegetarian. I'm not. But the problem is this: that when they take it away, they're going to genetically modify meat and bring in, like scientifically controlled meat, which is what, trustworthy, you know, um, from the government, in other words. uh, so I mean, it's a frightening thing because once they do this and they're doing it, they get active doing it. They use chaos to kill. Like in other words, we got a big virus hit on the farms here too. Our farms are under attack, multi-pronged attack, and they're already talking in the news it might collapse, which is serious shit, man. So around the world, they create this chaos, and all in the end, you have a famine, like in communist China or something. That's one way of doing it. The second way, which they'll probably do, is they've got corporations waiting to replace the food that's destroyed through crisis and war to save the planet, to bring in new types of genetically modified food. That's the frightening thing. That's the Huxley and Brave New World scenario, where
Sure.
everything's engineered, including humans. So they definitely have that planned. It's not just taking away the meat to starve the people; it's to modify the food completely. And anyway, so no cheese, right? No cheese, no milk,
Mm.
no meat, and maybe even no eggs and chickens eventually.
Mm.
See, because they fart, the carbon and whatever.
So ridiculous, isn't it?
Hey, and people fart too. Well, you got to go too.
Bro, you're making me hungry.
Right? Go get me a
Like, bro.
Hey, pastrami burger now. Jeez.
yeah. Hey, real quick, I wanted to go back to something that Brainwash said just at 8:41 p.m. It was a little while ago. He said YouTube is now allowing hateful content to see how far people will go. They just want to use it to push their agenda. They have always been using agents to radicalize people on the edge. I would like to, go a little farther on that a bit. What do you guys have any information on that? I saw some stuff on YouTube where they were talking about that topic, but I haven't looked further into it. Are they now just not banning quote unquote hate speech?
I don't think so.
Well, you want to know the interesting thing? There was this YouTuber, like back in I think January, a lot of videos were out with him abusing animals,
Yeah.
and to this day, he's still on YouTube. There's
Wow.
videos on YouTube with like freaking cats with their head and arms decapitated, and him cutting animals open too. I'm like, holy shit! And this has been going on for months, ever since December.
Yeah, that's
It's because
well,
that's what they want is people with warped minds.
Well,
Truth
so-
isn't anywhere.
where I get concerned though is that when we point out one channel and say, look, these guys are able to get away with this over here, but we are not over there, that usually flies back in our face. They're not going to go, oh yeah, that's right, so we're going to not be so restrictive. That just forces them to be more restrictive. Now, however, the guy that's abusing animals is, clearly a freaking nut job, and I don't approve of that in any way. But what I am curious about, though, is that if YouTube has suddenly just opened the floodgates and said, hey, you know what? We've heard everybody. We're just going to let anything fly on YouTube. If that is in fact the case, I am going to throw out a conspiracy theory here, but and sort of a conspiratorial prediction. What I predict is that quite literally, we will see some group of people will become, amazingly radicalized on YouTube, and there will be some sort of, terrible event that will occur because of it, and then YouTube will have to come back in, and the censorship that we will see will be 10 times worse than what we ever saw to begin with. That is just essentially the move that I see them taking on this. I don't believe for a moment that Google would suddenly decide, hey, you know what? We all of a sudden believe in free speech.
I think it would be a good idea if everybody learned how to use a ham radio.
Well, this conversation would be exceptionally difficult on ham radio. I have a technician's license, but I don't have a license to operate on HF frequencies or the equipment to do so.
I mean, yes, this type of conversation would be absolutely impossible, but at least we'd be able to get the truth out there to people that are willing to listen instead of being censored.
Sure.
Is this all we're gonna talk about, or is there more?
What do you want to talk about?
Basically everything.
We're talking about a lot.
I want to know
Everything is a very
everything.
broad subject.
I know, I know. I just like, man, since you guys started like all this stuff, I'm like so interested.
Word?
Good shit.
Like I was,
That's good.
yeah, I like wish you guys would never stop.
A beginning point, I would say, and I think many would agree, would be to start with just some basic reading to get an understanding. And this would be the debate, I suppose, for many, is to either read 1984 or Brave New World. Me personally, I would say read 1984. I think Cliff would probably say read Brave New World.
Yeah, just because Brave New World is more gentle, 1984 is brutal, and
Also,
it's yeah.
I like the shock factor.
I like the brutal too. That'll just scare someone into
What
not
the
doing
heck?
that shit.
another good book, another good book to read would be Death of a Nation
Death of a Nation. I haven't read that one.
Do you know
by
the author? Oh, yeah.
Dinesh D'Souza.
Oh, that's
Okay.
that's
I
a
think I've
doozy.
heard of
You'll
it.
have to write
Bro,
that
I
down. I
can't
won't know how to
read
spell that.
English.
It
What do you-
sounds familiar. I don't quite remember what it's about though.
He made a movie of it, but the book is better. It's about how the oligarchs are, running the world, and through immigration and all that other types of things. I'm trying to find a link of the description.
Okay,
of
let
it.
me say,
Okay.
let me say something. Congrats on the 41 subscribers, brother.
Thanks, man. Thanks for everybody that has subscribed. I do appreciate that.
No problem.
And of course, I'll put all these on my channel as well. So
Yeah, absolutely. If you guys are not, which I don't know why you would not be, but if you're a loser and have not subscribed to Cliff's channel, you're failing at
Bro.
life. You're failing at life. So you need to go subscribe to his channel immediately.
Bro,
yeah,
you already know I'm already subscribed to him.
Word.
another channel. Sorry, another thing you'll get from our channel, you could say, will be freedom. In every
And
sense
knowledge.
of the word. Yeah, well, yeah, freedom, which could be power, maybe to some degree too, and occult. Like I've always had a leaning to the occult. So what we're talking about with regards to what some would call government is only part of the system,
Mm-hmm.
and so there's a lot of knowledge in the occult. In my opinion, it's not just mystery religion. It is, the civilization. Hey, what does that not cover in the modern world, or which country does that not cover? So civilization that is created on a formula, a planning formula that works every time. That's why it works, and that's why they keep doing it, and that's why we keep repeating it. Is it's a formula that works on all civilization, that then the media comes out and tells you, oh, it's just how history is,
What's
They rise
fascinating
and fall.
is I don't think the formula's changed very much over the last, I don't know, however many thousands
No.
of years.
That's right. It doesn't change, and that's what's so amazing about finding this out. It is a formula. Like proof of that on the face of it is this. Plato even said that democracies always end in anarchy. So
Well,
this is
that
the
might
sort
be a
of thing
good
they
thing.
talk
We've
about.
got a lot of anarchists here. That might be a
Yeah, but he's okay.
His
Good
definition
point.
of anarchy is different, though. Yes.
No, I don't know. He's a very smart guy. He wouldn't waste his words. So let's look at that. No, he's saying this. He's saying that all democracies which is measure some kind of fucking ocracy, is always ends in anarchy. So anarchy is the next question of the free. Now, who can be trusted? Will they form gangs? Yes. So who's the biggest gang? See, so you're going to get inevitably another tyranny straight away because of anarchy. Not for you, not for a true anarchist. It can be knowledgeable and you know what I mean, and that live in harmony with his fellow man. If you give the average collective huge amount of population pure anarchy, you'll get what you have today. You'll have, that's what I mean. It goes back on itself. Where you have anarchy, you'll get inbreeding, you'll get scientifically designed families that can guarantee to be stayed in power. The sort of family intelligence that runs the mafia. With the mafia is child's play, and they're powerful enough, right? You've seen the mafia movies, how they work. Well, that's child's play compared to the gang that runs on top. This is what it is. We're just big gangs, and one gang now controls civilization. That's how it really is. There's a gang that runs civilization, and they are a race, and that's where it gets racist. Because who is this race? See, it's the Jews. No, it's way deeper than that. It'll go way, way deeper than that. That's just a front. So no, I'm not into that crap at all. That's amateur thinking,
Sure.
So it's fascinating. It really is. I'm always trying to glimpse for even higher stuff if I can find it too. Huxley and all that's just, that's no big deal. There's I'm trying to always look for higher knowledge too. Who's above that?
There always seems to be that area though where you just run into a brick wall. For me, anyways, I've always gotten to that point where, because I want to pin it down to somebody, like that's the guy. I've got a name and an address. Here you go.
If only.
Yeah. Oh man, it's, but well, I think this is this design does not come accidentally, right? So when we look at some of the organizations like Antifa or even the Hong Kong protesters, they all very cleverly do not have any given leader, or if there is a leader, nobody knows who that leader is. The leader you may know behind the scenes, but it's just looking at the crowd, they're just another person in the crowd. It's not this obvious hierarchy that is easy to spot out.
Yep, Jordan Maxwell put it a good way in one of his talks lately that he did, because he's still alive. I think Jordan Maxwell's about 80 now, he said. But he said it's like when you go to a prize fight. This is how they do it. When you go to a prize fight, there's people that run the prize fight. And so they bet on him there, and they fix it. They'll fix the fight and things like that. So that's really what they're doing too. It's just like a prize fight. Get them to be enemies for a start, and then get them to fight each other. And that can be down to the male and female, or the marriage and that's now falling apart. Or children against elderly is another one. See, the communist thing is very important to know, both of them. The Chinese one, very important, because these little bastards that get in power that are into this stuff, that are linked, or they're just crazy and just dumb and, do what you say, then it's almost like they're taunting us. Like we had this stupid idiot government one time come out and say, the birds are polluting. Like the birds are polluting. In other words, so the birds aren't part of nature now? And this is, again, Agenda 21, right? This is why they're getting these wild ideas. They're revolutionary, you see. And so he said, he's pretty much implying kill the birds, kill the birds. That's what Mao Zedong did. That's what he got his people to do. Kill all the birds. And then what happens? All the bugs appear because there's no birds. And then the bugs eat the crops, and that's how they starved. See, war on the food supply is a guarantee of a tyrant. Guarantee. Sure. So a lot of people don't know that. So people have to be very, very vigilant with their farming situation in their country, because Agenda 21 is stepping up on the farms around the world, and including America. And once they get to that, they can do what they want.
Yeah, and that is those are things that you'll see locally. That so when if you're simply looking at the federal level or just looking at big government, that's not where you're going to see this stuff taking place in the United States. And Cliff, I'd love to hear how it's played out where you live as well. But in the United States, a lot of states have actually fought off Agenda 21. Just local smaller government have fought off
Yes.
Agenda 21. You know.
Yeah.
Moves to try to implement some of this stuff. We've even had activists in courts that have been standing before judges pleading their case that fascism is the only way to implement Agenda 21 and save the world. Like, this is nuts. The people are they're yeah.
Yeah, and all this carbon stuff, it's verified. All of this, if you go and research it yourself, all of this carbon crap and carbon credits and what do they call it? Uh, Emissions trading, they call it here. Emissions trading. Because emissions is farting and carbon and I don't know, whatever else they think up. They could probably say oxygen tomorrow. What's oxygen's bad, and everyone will
Right.
have to believe it. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
how crazy they are. And most of the shit they're telling us is that. So that's what's so crazy. It's like if you thought the government was strange, once you really see it for how it is on the human soul, it is totally against you in the open. But the all of the tenets of people that accept it are that perceptively mind controlled that they can't see it. But that's how bad it really is. They're actually openly against you. So any resistance that the people see against that, no, it's just you're kidding yourself. And then you think, well, and then the biggest crisis is then you think, well, what are you saying that all people are bad? Well, not really. I mean, technically, yes, because they're all going along with it. But technically, they don't really know, do they? And some of us were like that. We'd be thinking, oh, no, they're probably, they're the same as us, Well, who's they? They're the same as us. They can be trusted. I'll go and vote for them.
Harambe is commenting on what you're saying, but he's saying tax the volcanoes because the volcanoes and the tectonic plate shifts are responsible for more release of carbon into the environment.
Yeah, they'd have to link human. See, the key is this: they're trying to say that you're the problem always.
Sure.
You are the problem,
Sure.
and that's their mantra. And that's the socialist mantra too.
I deal with it quite often through the regulations doing heat and air conditioning. So we saw a phase out of the R22 refrigerants because it contained CFCs, chlorofluorocarbons. So now we've went to what's called R410A refrigerant, which contains HCFCs. And
Yes.
Through some of the studies that I found, though, volcanoes also release more CFCs into the ozone layer than we could ever imagine trying to release into the atmosphere.
Sure.
Of course, that's a topic in another day to get into. If we're going to have that conversation, we need to pull out some facts and statistics to support all these things and really put them all out there.
I'm looking that up as well. They're just trying to get the cars off the road. We've been talking about that for some time, right?
Shut down transportation.
Yeah.
One of the things.
Yeah, limit definitely doing that. They want to limit the freedoms of people all around the world. Like, remember the Green New Deal? They're saying, you can't take planes anymore. We're in the year 2020, but we can't think up any new technologies to fly. Of course they can.
Sure.
So, the battery thing, see, their solution for all this change is, well, we're going to get batteries better and better and better.
Have you guys?
And they probably will.
Have you guys been keeping up with Sapphire, the Thunderbolt project? Sapphire. Anybody?
No, can't say I've heard of it.
Never heard of it.
Okay. It's way over my head, but it's. I'm not that big into science. I would not be doing it justice to even try to explain it to you. But let me just put it to you like this. These scientists, I'll give you some underlying reasons why you should go watch this, because you're going to wonder, why should I watch this, right? These scientists have had some major breakthroughs in science. To me, it looks like probably the biggest breakthrough in science in human history. So, for starters, it is going to be perfectly clean energy. What they were trying to do is replicate the sun. They were just trying to replicate the sun, and in the process of doing so, it looks as if they've discovered many other things.
Right.
They've found the creation. They've found a source of clean energy by doing this, completely clean energy. But what's really bizarre is this. During their test, they ended up with what I believe was magnesium. Okay, so they started with a controlled environment, controlled amount of elements. Of course, this is science, right? Well, magnesium created itself within this atmosphere and they cannot explain why. In other words, matter created itself from nothing in this science experiment, and
Wow.
this is So of course, scientists are losing their shit over this right now, trying to figure out how did this happen. It's something to watch. Now granted, it's not put into a format for normal Joe Schmo to watch. This was them, giving a presentation in front of other, world-renowned scientists. So I've watched it a few times and still don't understand it that well because I'm not a world-renowned scientist. So, but
It is interesting you say that because years ago, and I'm pretty sure that it's connected to uh, the Vedas, which is in India, in the Middle East and all that stuff, but mainly India. There's a lot of what they call the Akashic records, even. The Akashic field, the Akashic records, which
Mhm.
goes into time, space, and all that stuff. It's a metaphysics of the human consciousness and the whole world, basically. It's world knowledge. But they, like some of us have found that in history, they were super highly advanced, and I think that's true. There's a lot of evidence for that I've seen personally. And so, I'm pretty sure it was something like the Bhagavad Gita or the Vedas, and they were saying that the stages of civilizations go into, you know, these ages that we have, and one was like turning matter into energy, which was the atom bomb, and then beyond that, the next step was to create matter out of energy, which is the universe.
right.
So they've actually said that is part of the stage of evolution of these civilizations. Yeah.
I'm grabbing this link right now. I'm going to share it here so you guys can.
In
But
Afghanistan.
YouTube is not wanting to cooperate. Here we go.
Oh, I could tell you guys something, and you could take it as you want it if you want to know. I have a
Sure.
theory. What if a long time ago an alien race came here and seeded these people with something, but now that something that seeded these people with is starting to dry up because it's been such a long time and the gene pool is so polluted, and this is why what's happening today is happening today.
Genius, bro.
Oh, yeah.
Well, guys, I have to go.
Definitely a thought.
I am tired.
Hi, bro. Have a
See you
good one.
guys.
Later, man.
I'll
Good night.
learn next time.
Oh, you're gonna get everyone's hopes down on storming Area 51 now.
Oh, come on, man. We're not
Oh.
doing that now?
Oh,
We're not? Bruh.
Shit.
We were gonna do that?
I already got my tickets.
Bro. I didn't get my
September
ticket.
20th. You can't wait.
you got to go to the front gate. If you go any other place, they'll shoot you. You got to go to the front gate. Trust me. The U.S. government does not fuck around, and everybody should know that.
Yes.
Wow.
You got to go to the front
That-
gate. It is very important that you wear multicam, plate carrier, helmet, ham radio, and if at least one AR-15. Two would be better. That is the approved uniform to come and arrive at the front gate. Anything else, you're getting shot.
So bring a shotgun.
No,
Not if you-
AR-15.
Not if you know to run out of it.
Okay. Man.
Don't take
I
that
am
serious.
like-
Swear to God, if someone shows up there with wearing what I just said, I'm gonna
That would
That's
be
when they'll
funny.
shoot you.
That would be so fucking funny.
Hoping A10 Warhawk doesn't fly by.
Bro, I need to go to bed. I have to wake up early.
Good night, man.
And plus
night,
I got
buddy.
a
All right,
and
see you later.
plus
night,
I got a
Juan.
game tomorrow. See you
Yeah.
guys later. I'll be back next time.
All right, cool, man. Thanks for
Peace,
coming.
guys. Good luck.
So yeah, did you guys catch that link I dropped? It's up there. I dropped the link to that Sapphire project. I highly recommend taking the time to look at that. I've been very excited about it because there is a possibility that something happened in their testing that that this metal element that appeared within the environment of their testing. Maybe something went wrong and they didn't realize it, right? That's a possibility. But if not, and they're able to do this again and replicate it repeatedly, these guys may be debunking the entire idea that matter cannot be created nor destroyed, and that is massive. I mean, that opens the doors to creation. How was this thing? That just changes everything in science. Absolutely earth-shattering. Literally. It could be literally.
That's the other strange thing about the system is that there's a lot of good in it and a lot of carrots in it. So as we stumble down into all this stuff that's coming, there'll be some negatives at first, but they'll be filled with a lot of good or newness, and
Yeah.
maybe even efficiency, and then of course the big one, life extension, which will eventually be standard. This is why probably they want to thin us out as a people around the world, is because of the inevitable life extension, which can't really be trusted because then they're fiddling around with what's legal in lifespan. See, so if people fall into that, eventually end up in Logan's Run. There was this show in 1979 called Logan's Run, where they everything was free and happy. It was a utopia, socialist paradise, and the women were all free. Right, there was no marriage. They always have that, and then the only caveat is that you have to die at 30. You can't live over the age of 30. Huh?
That sucks. I'd be dead
We
already.
went to I'm sorry.
Go ahead, no.
They had to go to Carousel.
Yeah. There was some sort of religious ceremony when they die. Yeah. So it was pretty up there. So that's the sort of way it works. That's the thing. They'll catch the people with really genuinely good things like life extension, and everyone will go for it, and then it'll be it'll be legally trimmed. See, they've just got more control because you took their new little toy they gave you, the new Chucky doll. Yeah. So it's quite frightening, and this is what they mean by Satan. Satan in the contract is something's running the system, and it's contracting with us into some nasty things as well. And that's just how it is. So we've got to know good, eh? We've got to know what good is, and a lot of us have talked about that, trying to define what is good. What truly is good, and I'd put it down to pro-life. I'd at least do that.
Hey, Jeremy.
Yes, ma'am. How are you?
Good. Hi, good. So you were touching on something about the electric universe and matter.
Yeah.
And I've been really fascinated by all of this for the last couple of years. So I've been really looking into it. And I think there's definitely something here. And we're on the verge of it. And a lot of people are coming forward, networking consciously and in ways that we're just kind of pushing this consciousness forward. And that's why the push is on to shut it down, to really clamp down on all of this in such a big way. And it has to do with the fact that it goes like I would say what Tesla said, and everything, if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, vibration, and frequency. And everything that comes into the formed material world comes from the unformed, and that is through energy, vibration, and frequency. Everything that is taught in science is regarding the coalescing of energy coming together. And so that's why rituals and focusing energy and chanting and speech, because speech is like, they say in religion that God, God spoke the world into manifest. Well, that's a clue, because we are all participating in co-creation right here collectively together in this experience. And that's why predictive programming and mind control and manipulating the free will is absolutely paramount. And I think that's why they're heading towards depopulation, is because if we wake up and we proclaim our responsibility as co-creating, we're going to want to focus our energy and shift this into a way that is more in alignment with truth and love and the positive vibration that many are aware of what we intrinsically know to be right. And so I think they're trying to shut that down. They want to inhibit us from bringing forth that more positive enlightenment of higher consciousness. I think that's where the electric universe and the all of the, it's like a fractal energy thing of manifestation. And the double slit experiment, all these things kind of speak to that. And that's where I think we're going. We're going to realize that we have been lied to about so many things, and that we're going to realize that we need to take ability and envision something new, and that we could change the world by that if we really wanted to.
That's profound. I haven't really even began to consider it to that level. When we're talking, I'm just looking at it from a scientific standpoint, and they do, this the Sapphire project there, they do go into the electric universe, of course, and almost essentially prove that. I like where you're going with that, though. That's really cool. And when you talk about frequencies, that resonates with me anyways, and probably Cliff or any other musicians in here. I'm an audio guy. I really enjoy audio. Reason being is I believe that audio and those frequencies connect with you in a way that even visual never will.
Absolutely.
Even, movies, when you watch a movie, just for average Joe Schmo out there, if you watch a movie, it's always the music that really makes you feel that movie, right? So
it moves you. That's why they say that it moves you. It does. The energy vibration, like cymatics and the 432 and the 440 tuning, and how they changed that. Remember that?
Yeah. So you're talking about over time, right? How 440 is shifted and changed.
40s. When the standard music was 432 and they changed it to 440, the standard tuning.
Yeah.
That brought more bass in, though, didn't it?
No, it'd be a little bit higher tuned.
They went from a highly harmonious frequency into one that was more discordant and more chaotic energy. If you look at it under cymatic templates of the energy wave, it changed it to something so that people would be more agitated and less calm. That was supposedly some of the psychology behind it.
Oh, that's correct.
Now I have to comment here. I have looked at that pretty thoroughly, and I don't believe that while that was maybe an idea at the time, I don't think that it was ever in any way effective. There's really no tangible difference between 432 and 440. Just as if I tune down my guitar, if I play metal, so I play through all kinds of tunings where I may be in drop E on an 8 string, so it's literally an octave lower, or I may be in drop F sharp, or I may be in G sharp. I mean, tuning's all over the place, and while they all definitely have a different feeling, that's the reason why we use different tunings, so they all, they will all connect to you in a different way. I would say that if you wanted to find some tunings or frequencies that were very chaotic, it's really not so much in the tuning itself, and is just in the way the notes are put together and choreographed. So certain chord buildups will be very dissonant and very sharp to you, and will kind of make you feel uncomfortable, while some will make you feel very happy, and different modes, different scales, etc. I don't think that there's too much to look into with the tuning. I mean, that's just from what I've looked at in research.
Well, they've shown it on with cymatics that the structure of the tune of the frequency was more. It's kind of like the crystal formation in water and the messaging with the. I don't know if you looked at that guy. What was this Yamamoto or something that did crystal formations in water with a sound frequency and how it affected the crystal formation. But at any rate, it suggests that, like with all these other frequencies too, and like we're moving into the digital realm and more with frequencies and the 5G, and all of life is that biological water-based cellular structure is highly sensitive to all this energetic tuning and the vibrations with the weapons that are energy weapons.
Yeah.
And the long range acoustical device and all that millimeter microwave.
Some of that's been very fascinating. If you guys have never watched any of the videos that the military has put out with them testing some of this technology, it exists. So when people talk about this technology that the government has that puts out, a certain kind of frequency that will essentially put your whole body in pain, it's very real. I mean, these videos, you can look them up, and it's intense. I mean, so they've talked about it, using it for like crowd control or something like that, but I don't want them having that kind of shit. I really don't. I mean, what are you going to do if they have technology like that? Literally, it's so powerful, your whole body you're just in an excruciating pain. I don't give a damn what kind of gun you have. You're not going to point it at them and shoot. You're just going to lay there and beg for your life.
Yeah, the long range acoustical device, they tried that out in Iraq.
Oh, wait. Yes, they did, didn't they? Well, oh, man, it's been a long time. I don't remember. So I saw that back when I was seriously entertaining, but it was fun to watch. Was something that used to exist called Project Bluebeam. Has anyone here ever heard of that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was part of that. I will say conspiracy theory, because I think that was
Wasn't that holographic projections into the sky?
Exactly.
Well, they've also added the Project Bluebeam into most LEDs by adding more purple and blue spectrum instead of the full spectrum, so that our eyes pick up on these things like a cell phone, like a TV is like a flashing strobe light, but it's so fast that we can't see, correct? So when we shut our eyes, it's like, sorry.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. So, Cliff signing off. I'm going to say bye to Cliff real quick. Cliff, have a good night, sir.
Thanks. Good one. And I'll see you next time.
Yes, sir.
Cheers. See ya.
Cheers.
So essentially, Project Bluebeam wasn't only projecting this beam into the sky and maybe bringing like a Jesus or like a Mohammed, depending on where we live, so the people would feel liberated, etc. I think that was one of the main objectives behind their goals. But what they've essentially done, I liked your comparison to music, because I'm a musician as well, and I can appreciate that. So what they've done is they've increased the K, from like 1800 K, whatever it is, Ks, to like almost 4800 in most headlights, headlamps. The LED lights, they say that save us so much energy that we actually plug into. They really don't. They just different parts of the light spectrum that affect us differently. I think it's more weaponized warfare. Personally, I think.
What kind of effect would that have? So clearly, when we just use our old style light bulbs, they definitely have a much warmer feel to it, right? A lot of the LEDs put off a more colder, harsh light.
Right.
And this is actually obvious for anyone that for example, in my scenario here, my little studio that I've built up,
Hello?
Lighting is a issue that we have to worry about with a green screen behind me and stuff. The lighting matters, so I have to take these kind of things into consideration. But what kind of effect do you think that would have on someone's mind if their whole their whole house is lit in LED versus just an old-fashioned light bulb?
Well, I would say, for the most part, the weaponizing is hurting people's sleeping patterns and fucking with their melatonin, with the melatonin production, especially in our pineal glands, and which is why they add so much fluoride as well. So these lights essentially make us think that it's the middle of the day. So if our bedroom light's on before bed, our eyes can't differentiate between that light and the sun because it's more of that spectrum instead of full spectrum.
Sure.
That makes any sense.
Yeah, no. In fact, well, my little boy, he has muscular dystrophy, and he has a hard time sleeping at night. So we had to go do a sleep study with him at the hospital. And one of the things that they talked about with him was to make sure that he doesn't have like TVs on and stuff like that because of that very thing. It his mind and his brain believes that it's still daytime, so he doesn't sleep as well. And what in the world kind of gifts are we sharing here? What is this?
Right. And this is what tablets, phones, and TVs essentially do, and nobody gets this, right? It's like literally we're watching strobe lights, and then so most people, they read one book before bed, and that's usually Facebook, right? So they're watching their videos,
yeah,
and it's flashing at them, and then they try and sleep, and they can't sleep, and they wonder why. Well, if you have no melatonin and your brain thinks it's party time, well, it's party time, right? How are you going to shut your brain off for some rhythmical eye movement sleep when it's not possible?
Sure. Then I suppose that's maybe one element to it, I would think it'd probably go further than just sleep if that was the case. But
yeah, for sure. I just just thinking aloud sort of thing, right? Well, I know I'm affected by it, right?
Yeah. So while I've got a few of you guys here, I would also like to hear from some of you guys on what kind of topics you would like to hear discussed on the podcast. I think you guys might be getting an idea of kind of where we're going with the channel and the podcast. I don't know, but what topics do you guys want to hear more about?
As I said last time, the many tactics they use to control you mind-wise, word-wise, all those different. Cliff is very privy to the many ways they manipulate you.
Sure.
I think he enjoys the topic.
Yeah, no, he definitely does. His like I said earlier, his forte is without a doubt, sort of those kind of things. I am much more of a, sort of, researcher of current events. That's always just kind of been what I've been interested in. And I will probably always continue to do that. That's it's just what I am naturally focused on. It's just what my mind is attracted to, and I find it's best just to kind of go with that because that's.
What do you consider to be trustworthy sources for that? Because
none of them really. None of them.
Yeah,
really,
I cannot. Find anything that I can really truly rely on.
No. We can, look at multiple sources and then try to just come to a conclusion on ourselves, or in reality, because at some point in time we all start to learn the language, right, that they use in a lot of these things. So for example, the DARPA thing, we read what they're telling the public, and then we can kind of read into that and go, this is what you really mean. We've seen the way this language plays out in reality enough times that we can kind of say, I think this is probably what you really mean.
Jeremy, the language you're using right now is indicative and interesting because language is where we use words typically with energy, vibration, and frequency, and
Mm-hmm.
we're communicating thoughts. And when they do rituals, they cast spells, and spells are spelling words. The
Mm-hmm.
etymology of things,
Sure.
and it all goes into the psychology of everything. And that mind control is pivotal, that we must be under a spell and be thinking certain things that controllers want us to think.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I've had some friends online that have been huge studiers of language, and the way words are built up, the way they've manipulated language, and it's always been an interesting topic to me, mostly because even just with the buildup of language, I'm speculating because I don't know the science behind language entirely, but we think in our own language, right? So we know that there's a difference between somebody who speaks in the English language thinks in comparison to someone that say, well, we can take ancient Hebrew language, for example, right? The way their language was much different than ours. Our language is much more scientific and specific, where theirs was a lot more broad and sort of artistic.
Well,
So
it
it
started
changes the
out
way you
like
think.
pictograph, drawing pictures of things.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but if you manipulate someone's language, though, you can manipulate the way they think. But you can't just
Right.
dramatically change the way someone's language and them not ever notice. I mean, it takes time. Now, what we're seeing now, of course, in public discourse is they are doing that, but they're just redefining words, however they feel fit. This word now means
What's
that.
Yeah, we're in the Discord.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, the English language is actually a newer language, and it's become the most dominant language in the world. And I heard someone saying about the fact that like Eskimos, they have like 200 words in their vocabulary for just describing snow, different types of snow and everything related to that, because it's such a big part of their um, existence. And they were comparing that, saying that the English language, we have like over 200 words relative to deception, lying and deceiving and things like that. I thought that was
Oof.
interesting.
Where did you read this?
I think it was in, I've looked at so many things. I think it was
That's okay.
possibly
Yeah.
in a video called The Language of Creation. I think I heard that reference in there, because what triggered it was your mentioning of the Hebrew language and how it got changed over time. And I think that was in there, and I think that's where I heard that about over 200 words. And it made me just think about how the English language, we have a lot of words that sound the same but have very different meanings,
Mm-hmm.
and how that affects what we're when we're trying to communicate. We're saying the same vibration, but our intention of what we're thinking is really different. I wonder if that could cause us some cognitive dissonance or something.
So fascinate means to be witched, have a spell, witchcraft. So if I'm fascinated, I am essentially under the spell of fascination. Looking at Jeff C's, words here. Green bean is triggered. Triggered. Why are you triggered? Well, he's lit up, but he ain't saying nothing. What's going on there? Are you muted? Yeah. Why is Green Bean muted? Anybody know?
He shouldn't be. He's a pretty cool person, man.
I'm gonna unmute him. All right, you're unmuted. I don't know why you. Some people have ended up muted, server muted, and I don't know why.
Maybe it's a default setting on your server.
No, it's not. Once they're given a particular role, they should be. So if they have this role, they shouldn't be muted. So I don't know why it's doing that, but you're not muted anymore. Hola.
You got me there.
Yeah.
All right. So if you're in search of topics, I would suggest the topic of eating animals versus not.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm just looking for you know, I suppose that could be probably like a one-off topic. We could do something like that. Uh, but generally speaking, a lot of people like American news. So a lot of people like to hear Middle Eastern news. They want to hear about what's going on over there. A lot of people don't want to hear news at all. They just want to hear very broad, terms. Or maybe you want to hear more about. Maybe you want to hear more philosophy. Uh, I don't know if you guys get into philosophy at all. I enjoy philosophy. I really like philosophy. Damn postmodernist. So yeah. Anyways, everyone just got quiet there. Uh, Anyone else got anything else you want to add on tonight's podcast? Is there any other topics? I know Goy got us. You were sending me a lot of links tonight. Then I had mentioned and asked if you wanted to go over any of that stuff on the show.
Oh, I didn't know you were like, I was listening to the show. I didn't think you meant tonight though. I thought you had something pre-planned.
Oh no, I just if you want to come on the show and just cover some of that later on, you absolutely can. During the show. I just meant if you wanted to cover any of it, when we open this thing up too. But yeah, if that goes for anybody. If you guys have material, no way. If you guys have material that you ever want to cover on the show, just hit me up. I mean, essentially, what I'm trying to do with this podcast is it's based around this community. It's not listen to me and Cliff, or really more Cliff than me, but it's not really listen to us talk. I really want this to be more of a community thing where we all collectively work together, and exercise the Socratic method properly and come to a consensus of truth, and then as a community also try to put that information to the public, and hopefully YouTube doesn't kick us off of there, and we can maybe reach some people on YouTube that want to come in and have dialogue. Even tonight I saw there was a debate going on there with Tom Bombadil. Yeah. So you guys were kind of having a little debate there about the Constitution. So hopefully he comes in the Discord server, right? We can talk to him and he'll say, "Hey, cool. Actually, you guys have some good ideas. I never thought about these things like that." And boom, we have evangelized people with the truth. It's like a type of evangelism.
Yeah, I sent you the links about what was looking to happen with the economy, with the dollar, and
Yeah.
that just I think that's really kind of important. It could really affect a lot of people, and I just thought maybe you might want to look into that a little more and maybe talk about it. But
I do, and it's actually something I keep up on that kind of stuff daily, really. And really, what I do see is when you sent that stuff, it's not necessarily shocking because I've actually been seeing this coming for a long time. But I absolutely do think that with this next recession, the value of the dollar right now is already so low in comparison to gold and silver. It's not really a good currency anymore to use for for the petrodollar, for international exchange. It's really not. What I think, and I think we're going to see one of two things. We are either going to see it go to the euro or something like that. Of course, if the petrodollar drops, we're going to see the U.S. economy is going to crash. The value of our currency will totally tank if we don't have the petrodollar propping it up.
I don't think the rest of the world's currency is doing that well either anymore.
No, that's not. And that's exactly where I'm coming in with this is I think we're going to probably see something along the lines of like the IMF or the World Bank, but, overseen by the United Nations. They're going to propose a new form of currency that will be outside of the, the dollar and all that kind of stuff, so that it's not affected by our currency, right? So they're going to say, look, this is catastrophic. We're going to see a global, economic crisis globally, and then the United Nations will, a Hegelian dialect will have the solution for us, right? They'll say, hey, we've got this new currency that you guys can try out. I think that's what we're going to see, right? When we're talking about one world currency, I think that's how we're going to see it come about.
Hashtag buy Bitcoin.
Nah.
Yeah, I think this is part of the way that they're, problem reaction solution, like you said, they want to put everything into the digital realm. And so having this crash with the economy and the dollar will be a way to get away from the paper currency and announce, and this is going to be worldwide digital currencies. So that like someone was just saying how it doesn't look good across the board, but that plays right into this future thing of why this will be the solution. Jeremy, can you unmute Mary Jane?
Yeah.
I think she said she's muted, but I don't see her.
I don't know why you guys are so muted. Let me go through here and check this, because there's a bunch of people that probably want to talk. Yeah, there's a ton of people server muted. Super aggravating. You're not. I think. Understand. Hey, Mary.
Can you hear? Hey, Jeremy. How are you doing? Good. Do I have to push the button to keep talking?
I don't know. Is this set up to?
Yes, it is.
It might be set up. It might be set up to where you have to use that. Yeah.
No problem. I'm pretty new to Discord, so I'm just.
I'll change it. There you go. Wham. There you go. Should be good.
Well, that might be a setting that they have because they're on their phone right now.
And I think I'm checking it. Use voice activity. Yeah. So you should be able to use voice activity now. So you may be able to not push the button.
Okay, I'll try.
All right.
There we go.
Awesome.
Do you have? Is this streaming? I had a friend ask me, is this streaming online on YouTube currently?
It is.
Oh, okay. Yep. Good. All right.
Oh, I thought the show wasn't on YouTube anymore.
No, it's still on YouTube.
Okay, great.
Yep, still on. Yeah, don't say anything too crazy. The thought police will be coming after you tomorrow morning. They'll be at your doorstep.
Don't wrong think here.
Yeah. So, hey, going back to Bitcoin, I'd like to know why you guys think that Bitcoin would be a good alternative. Bitcoin terrifies me simply because it may be decentralized, but it is, in fact, still on the digital realm. I don't see how that's really a credible currency, that's totally manipulable. I understand people say, well, you don't understand Bitcoin, but it's digital, and that's what worries me.
Well, you could assign or create a paper wallet as well if you're so uncomfortable with it being completely digital. Okay. I mean, the transactions will still be digital, but you can create a paper wallet and maybe exchange it with the value. Like this paper wallet is worth, I don't know, 0.5 Bitcoins or whatever. So I guess that's a way around it if you're concerned about that.
Can anyone explain how Bitcoin works? Like, do they just use prime and common numbers and work around that, or is there any simplified layman's term on how Bitcoin actually works, or do we even have to know how it works?
Honestly, it's better visually explained than auditorily explained.
Okay.
But ultimately, it's a kind of network where, well, a ledger technically, because you're looking at all the transactions that are going on, and everyone has a copy of the transaction. Everyone makes sure that the correct amount is being sent, and that there's no double spend, and so on and so forth. And I'm as you can see, I'm not the best person to talk about it, but it's just a sort of network where people can see like what's going on.
Yeah,
is it open, like a tracking?
It's an open source system that's permissionless, so anyone can participate, and it's one ledger. like BBC was saying, and in order to update this ledger, it's just like a database if you think of it like that. I'm just talking in layman's terms here.
Hmm.
Anybody can update it, and in order to update it, you have to. This is the revolutionary concept with Bitcoin is the proof of work, which is basically your computer is trying to solve a problem, and the only way to solve it is through brute force attempting random numbers, and so that's the difficulty. And as more people participate, the harder the problems become to solve. And so, roughly every 10 minutes, the problem is solved. And then whoever solves it updates the database with the transactions, which is one person sending, um, basically, I guess you can just say the Bitcoin to another person. And so, this system's immutable to where a transaction that happened 20 days ago theoretically cannot go back and be changed. So in today's world, merchants have these chargeback issues and all that. Bitcoin, once it's written on the blockchain, it's pretty much there and it's not going to change. And this means that state actors and banks can't reverse transactions or just steal money from your account. And there's a finite supply of Bitcoins that will ever be produced, which is also a key difference compared to the current system, which has money printers that inflate and basically steal purchasing power from everybody. But that was a lot, so I'll go on mute again.
No, you're good.
No.
I mean, the monetary policy is broken from the very get go. So, I mean, it has that going for it, but I think really, still my concern though, like posted above there in the comments, is the power drops out, we have no currency, or.
Yeah, but the current system today would pretty much come to a halt because most people don't operate on cash, and there are other solutions where there's a thing called open dimes, which is just like a physical little computer chip. You can think of it like that, where you can load an amount of Bitcoin on it. And so, if say you put 0.1 Bitcoin or 0.01 Bitcoin on there, you can recover it on the blockchain and transmit the value, but you can also just transfer it person to person. And it would be like, you can think of it as like a little poker chip that can be redeemed at the casino. If you have $100 chip, and I could just give that to you, and you can go redeem it at the casino, so you'd probably take that value transfer. So if enough of those get released into the wild, that's like a whole layer of transactions that are happening that don't need to be cryptographically proved on the blockchain. And this is where the really anonymous transactions can take place.
Mm. Does the recipient have to have a Bitcoin system itself? Like, can you just give Bitcoin to someone, or do they also have to be?
Well, you need to have an address, yeah. So you want to have an address, but you don't have to run the actual software. The more Bitcoin you have, you would want to run a node, and what a node does is it basically verifies every 10 minutes when a miner says, "Hey, look, I completed this math problem, and now I'm going to update the ledger." You basically, when you run a node, is you verify all these transactions, and you make sure that there was nothing, there wasn't somebody that said that they were sending 1 Bitcoin when they only had 0.1, right? You're verifying all of the previous histories, and you don't really need to do that as a user, but any good Bitcoiner does, because that's the whole point, is you can't audit the Federal Reserve. But if you run your own node, you can audit the system, and you can verify that the Bitcoin you received, nobody's lying to you. So you get to
run your own node. Is that a hashtag?
Yeah, that's a thing in there.
Okay.
And you can run a node on like under $100 piece of hardware, and they're trying to get you to be able to run a node on like a mobile device.
Hmm. Do you think there's a lot of pushback from from those who don't want this to happen, or like how popular would you say Bitcoin is?
Well, amongst the people that really understand it, it's like super popular. But like
Yeah.
the like nation states, I don't think really fully grasp it. They might
Right.
just have in the last few years, and they're probably trying to think of ways to attack it.
Right. Hmm.
And the ways to attack it are like I've actually got a video I can post of like some guy that what what worked with one of the NSA programs, and they talk about how they disrupt open source software projects and how they, and it's the same tactics we know today of like divide and conquer, or like we're going to put an issue on the table here that really doesn't matter and just get the developers wasting time arguing each of these sides, or we're going to try to introduce a cold code vulnerability as part of our like code upgrade here. And so
Right.
like the attacks are pretty well known, I'd say.
I've been to a guy's house one time. So again, I do heat and air conditioner work. So I go to the guy's house and he's trying to cool his attic. Yes, I know that sounds bizarre. Uh, he had created an entire area in his attic that he had sheetrocked up and all that, and he had just a massive collection of servers up there, and he needed it cooled, of course, because servers cannot operate in 120 plus degrees. So I asked him what he was doing for, using that for, and he said it was to mine for Bitcoin, that he had created all this to mine for Bitcoin. So why would he need that much processing power to mine for Bitcoin if it's that simple that anybody can do it? Or is it?
Yeah, so there's running a node, which what I was talking about, which anybody can do, is just verifies the transaction. It could mine, but it has like so few guesses per second, it's like pretty irrelevant. So what the guy in the garage is doing with a whole bunch of miners is he's the guy guessing the math problems. And right now, if you guess the math problem right, you win 12.5 Bitcoins.
Now, why did they set it up like that? That that you had to, guess this thing right.
Yeah, so proof of work.
Gumballs.
Yeah, that's called proof of work. So it's just like a gold miner. We know that when somebody gives you a gold coin, that a lot of work went into producing that. The miner has to buy a bunch of equipment, the hardware, or the backhoes that or digging devices, whatever, and the whatever machine. Fuck, I forget what it's called. But anyways, to separate the gold from the dirt, and then he has to burn a bunch of gasoline energy. So work went into it. The other method is proof of stake, which is like the Federal Reserve with the printing press. It doesn't really cost much energy to turn on a printer and print more currency, right? That's like really easy to produce. So where gold is very hard to produce. Well, with Bitcoin, so the more fair model, when you talk about money creation, and if you want to do it in an ethical way, you consider ethics, and you see that it's much more fair to produce money. Let the person who's going to put in the most work to produce the money actually do it. And with Bitcoin, the inflation schedule is such that it's pretty fair, and every 4 years that reward gets cut in half. So May of next year, it goes from 12.5 Bitcoin every block that's found down to 6.25, and then 4 years later, approximately, it'll go down. It'll cut in half again. And this is really what secures the ledger. This is why a state can't attack it, is because we have private individuals directing all their computing power towards this ledger to get this prize. And if more hash power or more computing power comes online, this math problem adjusts, and it adjusts every like 1,000 and some odd blocks, roughly every 2 weeks. And so if somebody were to like add like double the hash rate, they would only have an advantage in this game for 2 weeks. You know, they could only get 1,000 block advantage, and then the difficulty adjusts upward, and now the math problem's harder, and it was just like it was 2 weeks prior. So it's kind of like attack resistance. And the same thing applies if someone pulls half the hash rate away, it's going to slow the network down for 2 weeks, but then it's going to adjust down to where you know, everybody can mine again, or you know, the mining will continue then every 10 minutes roughly.
Well, somebody definitely put a lot of thought into it, didn't they?
Yeah, this is like not something that just came out of the blue. This was like 20, 30 years of work and innovation, and there were like many failures leading up to it. And all of those revolved around like, well, at least the recent ones were around centralization. So people had like internet currencies before, Bit Gold and I think E-Gold, and they would just shut those guys down, basically threaten to arrest them.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't necessarily surprise me, right? If any kind of currency that, hell, countries that go against the petrodollar are pretty catastrophically overturned with regime change wars. So, you know, as somebody that tries to create a currency that just would replace it would, of course, you know, go downhill pretty quickly for those people. But, yeah, I don't know. I'm not entirely convinced. I'll do some research on it and look at it. And I don't necessarily know that it's not it might be a good alternative, you know, currency, but I still think that there's some major, you know, hurdles to jump over to get to it as the currency that we would use. I mean, I think there's some major concerns to use it as the main currency.
Well, there's a strong argument to be made that it being digital is a feature, not a bug, because everything physical we can produce more of. Like gold is the one thing that if we put enough human power at it and we had enough time, which time really is the only scarce thing in the world, then we could probably get as much gold as we want, right? We've only scratched the surface.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sorry to bring up a topic you guys had earlier. I was away from the phone, but I had my earpiece in, and I heard somebody, it might have been you, Jeremy, discussing about cryptocurrency becoming a mainstream currency. Was that correct?
Becoming a what currency? A main what?
Like used widely and mostly as opposed to the U.S. dollar.
Right. Yeah. That's what I was saying just now. Is that, you know, I could maybe see it being used as a kind of an alternative currency, right? So I mean, right now we have multiple currencies. We have gold, silver, the dollar. You know, so I could still see it being used as like an alternative currency, but I don't know that I see it, you know, being practical as a primary currency.
Well, Jeremy, hold on, because it's coming. Apparently, the recent one of the last three, I think it was the last Kaiser report on RT. Max Kaiser was reading a statement by one of the head, or used to be a head, Goldman Sachs guys, who used to run I guess one of the central banks too. I don't remember his name. It's something like blind something. It sounds like it's a knighted name or something. But anyways, this guy had made a statement, and it had to do with all of the banks and everything, the way everything works. Basically, what he flat out said was they need something like, and he listed the name of it, and the name is the one that that Facebook was wanting to release, whatever the name of that cryptocurrency was. I don't recall the name off the top of my head, but he was listed that name in that statement, and that's what they're actually going to be leaning towards as a world currency. It is not only required, but severely needed that they're going to do it.
Yeah. We're back to that movement again that I was talking about much earlier. I said, guys, we got a lot of movement going on, right? I mean, it's just so much. We'll see. We'll see if that comes into play. Man, that's bizarre. I mean, in order to do that, of course, it would be the crash of the dollar, right? And I see that coming sooner than later. For starters, Trump may just be another puppet on the show, right? So I've speculated this. Trump is just another puppet on the show, and what we're going to see is that Trump has created such a polarized political environment that you have a lot of people that are really and truly and genuinely would just assume watch the nation burn to the ground so long as they could, watch Trump burn with it. So I can kind of see that a lot of people would actually be in support of something like that, of literally crashing the economy in order to get back at Trump, and then that would implement, it would open the door for them to basically do whatever they wanted to do with currency.
Yeah, they got up making a statement, the Democratic Party, about they want to crash the currency,
right,
the economy, just to put it on his lap.
Yep. Yeah, you're right, because that's been his basically his entire stick, is look how great the economy is doing. Now, of course, that's not the case, right? He racked up $0.9 trillion his first year of debt in his first year, which was a reduction from the Obama administration. The Obama administration averaged $1.2 trillion a year racked up in national debt. However, Trump is right back up to par for the course, baby. 1.2 trillion. That's what he set the second year around. So, $1.2 trillion added to the national deficit, and that comes with that comes at a cost, right? I mean, we have to pay interest on this money, and not just interest. That is what runs inflation up. That is what reduces your buying power. So when you go to buy things, they cost more money. We were talking about Taco Bell earlier. A number 6 came with the chalupas and the tacos, just like 2 years ago, was $6 and something. Now it's well over $8. That's a huge percentage increase.
Max Kaiser had made a statement like 12 years ago pointing out that the bank, it's a bank in Germany, once they started to have financial problems, that the entire world was going to basically fold as the world economies based on the fact that they hold so much debt, and they are the largest bank. And sure enough, they started having issues recently, and everything's been tanking since they literally started having a run on the bank. Trying to think of the name. Got a goofy name in Germany.
Well, if it's German, I'm probably not going to understand it anyways.
Deutsche Bank.
Okay.
You can Google that, and you could see that here not long ago they did have a run on the bank. $1 billion a day withdrew for days on end.
Damn. Wow. Yeah, that's a hell of a run on the banks for sure.
Of course, it's not mainstream, and you get everyone else, including Trump, pointing to, it's this, it's that, it's the Chinese manipulation of their currency, when in reality, it's that Deutsche Bank had already started, been a good week and a half, 2 weeks in, and everything, including the stock market, taking a hit day after day after day, and that's where it's caused from. From that point, when they had a run on the bank, nothing has recovered or been good since. They're saying the first quarter of 2020 is when we're really going to feel it and see it.
Well, that and so typically we see a recession. I think the average is every 7 years, and that's because the Federal Reserve, as we pour money into the economy, into the markets. Well, we have to take that money back out, and that's supposed to be the way the Federal Reserve worked. It was supposed to maintain that balance of money going in, money coming out, and that is what the interest rate is for. We can raise and lower that interest rate in order to control how much money goes in and how much money comes out of the economy. Now, what the Federal Reserve, the way that they paint this picture for you is that the way they're supposed to do this is they will lower the interest rates, which will push a kind of a boost to the economy. It gets manufacturing going, it gets businesses flowing, it just gets money moving around the markets, and that helps everybody. There's jobs, etc., and everything looks great. Problem is that of course you have to eventually raise the interest rates to pull that money back out so that we can maintain the value of our currency and the buying power that we have with that money. They have failed to do so. We are now at year 10. It's the longest we have ever had in history since we've had a recession, and that is because every administration, and not just the administration, but just the Federal Reserve in general, has kept that interest rate low and has propped up the economy for 10 years now. And so when they finally are forced to raise that, when they're finally forced to raise that interest rates, it's going to impact us pretty dramatically. And they're probably
you
going
might
to
as well
just try
get
to
it
keep
out
it
of
low as
your
long as they can.
put it out of your vocabulary about fixing the economy and bringing it up. Max Kaiser's been going over that in detail for years, and
it's
impossible, literally impossible based on math.
Well, yeah, I mean, we would have to. Yeah, well, you're right. Based on math, I think it's completely impossible, and we would just have to totally crash the economy and start over, which I'm fine with that. Let's just give the Federal Reserve the middle finger, tell them to go fuck themselves, and let's start over. Why not? I mean, really, why not? Why are we letting them control us? We can literally just say, hey, you know what? Go eat a bag of dicks. We're out of here. I mean, really, why can't we do that? Why are we subjected to their rules? I just can't. I can't grasp this. I mean, these are all man-made numbers, right? I mean, we just came up with this. I mean, aside from, of course, the bonds that we sold out and the debt that has been purchased by other countries, we have to, in some way, honor that, I suppose, right? I mean, even that is self-evident that, if there's a balance. So if someone buys your debt, you have to pay it back to some extent. You're indebted to them. Now, granted, I don't know how, if you buy someone's debt, what the hell are you really buying? It's quite bizarre. But nevertheless, yeah, I mean, I don't see any way out. Of course, we're just kicking the bucket down the road. I've seen some people comment, though, that it is time to just start focusing your mind on survival. So, property, areas that you can farm, stuff like that. And I'm not the person to give you advice on that, but there are plenty of people here that spend a lot of time on that subject that can definitely help a lot.
Yeah, sustainable power, sustainable farming, and sustainable living is the way to go. And plus, precious metals and back to the barter system, in my eyes, would be the only way things will work great again.
Well, I would say go get a bunch of solar panels, but one of these guys has me scared of these solar panel overflows. The solar power overflowing out of the solar panels is going to get pretty dangerous.
Solar power is very very difficult to understand. Wind power is much easier, but doesn't produce much. You have to have a huge tower. But hydropower is the thing that would work best for a decent, a mid-sized home. 2-3 bedroom home. If you have a river close by, within a few hundred yards of you, you could power your whole house just from hydropower.
So in Agenda 21, and by Agenda 21, I'm talking about a book that Glenn Beck wrote. There are, of course, there's an energy crisis, right? And so everyone's purpose in life is to keep their footprint on the earth as minimal as possible, while everyone has a task to do. Well, the women, they did not go to work every day like the men did. They stayed at home. And what they did at home is they would walk on these energy boards that would be sort of like a treadmill, right? You'd get on this thing and you'd walk, but they would generate energy, and they had to do this every day. And the way he paints a picture, it would be like walking a ton of miles. You'd have to walk a lot. The men, when they went to and from work, their bicycles would all have little battery packs on them, so that when they would pedal, it would power up these battery packs. And then when they stopped, they would have to, upload that energy into these battery banks that would save all this energy. I thought that was a fascinating concept, that he's viewing Agenda 21 to potentially get that extreme. Sounds a bit absurd, though, doesn't it? Bunch of hamsters on a hamster wheel with little alternators. That's the way I view that. We'll just all be little hamsters.
The part I don't like is they're trying to push the homesteaders and people that are self-sufficient into the cities and out of the woods by taxing them to death for their property.
Yeah, and I've actually had debates with socialists that have made the argument off of that premise that global warming will essentially push everyone out of the rural areas and into the cities, and therefore socialism, they say, is the only economic platform that will sustain that type of society. And to them, I say that they are absolutely nuts. But still, that is I have heard that debate more than once, that global warming will push us into the cities, and that socialism will be the only economic platform to sustain us.
Yeah, global warming is not going to push push us into the cities. It's the government that's going to do it, and they already are.
Well, sure, yeah, but their argument is that we'll all be pushed into the cities because transportation is going to be much more difficult if we can't drive cars, right? So global warming is going to become so extreme, and we have to reduce carbon emissions. So, transportation is going to become very important. And at some point, if it becomes this serious, right, that population control, etc., even your calorie intake, they're going to accredit to your impact on the environment and everything. So they're going to want everyone to live as closely together as they possibly can, and you'll have a little bitty small apartment that might be, for your three-person family or four-person family. You're going to have one room, everyone sleeps on a floor, you have a bathroom and like a little stove or something, like a little studio apartment. That's all everyone's going to have. But hey, everyone has free housing, right? It's going to be great. You'll have free healthcare, free housing, etc. They just forget to tell you that part, to where, oh, actually, yeah, but you get this little 12 by 12 cubicle in the pre-built government apartment complex.
That reminds me of those buildings. Well, it was called some kind of city in, I think it was China or something. They knocked it down in the early 90s. But there's now 30,000 people living in like a 4-acre plot. But the buildings were, 30 stories high. But everybody had to sleep in a 10 by 10 area. That was their living space.
That's what it's going to come to, man. That's what it's going to come to. And hopefully we can break into Agenda 21 here. That's been a very convoluted topic, because when I looked at Agenda 21, man, it was always so wrapped up with, quite literally conspiracy theories. And so even the kind of stuff that I'm saying now, if I'm seriously discussing Agenda 21, and trying to literally put out some information about Agenda 21. I'm not going to be saying things like, you're going to be stuck in this 12 by 12 cubicle room. Those are just speculations. I don't have anything to support that. Those are, baseless claims. However, Agenda 21 is very real, and those are some of the implications and some of the potential consequences of Agenda 21. So we definitely need to get more into detail with that, because man, it was such, when people were really talking about Agenda 21, for fuck's sakes, man. I mean, it just was such a, it just turned into so many of these really wild conspiracy theories that anytime you heard Agenda 21, you're like, oh fuck, this dude's gonna start talking about the lizard people or something, or goddamn, all the frogs are turning gay now, which I know the frogs really did turn gay, but I'm just joking around about that. But I mean, you get what I'm saying. It got so crazy that nobody actually even wanted to entertain it as truth. It was a real thing, and it is. It's a real thing.
You think vaccines are a part of it?
I don't know. Admittedly, I wish I was, more in the know on vaccines, but I don't know. Maybe. I know, Team Somebody, that's your thing. You could probably help us on that.
Well, I know that I've seen Agenda 21 when it used to be on YouTube. I don't know if it still is. It's kind of a long documentary, but there was a part with Bill Gates, and he like put up a formula, in front of all these people with his bullets, and he's like, if P represents people, and it was basically an equation to lower the population in order to sustain, I guess, their elite hierarchy. And I know he went on some kind of like humanity thing kick where he gave, he ended third world countries polio, but basically they injected the polio into the people. And I mean, I just, it's so crazy that it just sounds ridiculous. So
yeah. Well, sometimes the truth does sound very crazy, right? I mean, everyone here probably has that moment in their life where you've had a story that you tell somebody, like there's something really crazy that happened in your life. And every time you tell that story to somebody, it just sounds so hard to believe that no one believes it. But to you, you're like, no, this shit really happened. It happened to me. I know, right? So you have those stories. The same thing could be true for these kind of things. Sometimes the truth just sounds so bizarre that no one wants to believe it, but it's really true. That's sometimes, not all the times. Sometimes people just come up with crazy shit, and you're like, what? That does happen. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to get off here and going to end this ridiculously long live stream. So I will see y'all, I guess, Saturday. We're going to do it again Saturday, and I'm going to try to have some actual, material prepared for Saturday, kind of more like we did last Saturday, and see what we can cover some stuff Saturday. So good talking to you guys.
Pleasure as always.
Yep.
Later, man.
Later, guys.
Good night.